Hello, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It is 6:32 PM. I would like to make a motion that we go into a closed session to discuss and act on a potential property purchase. Can I have a motion? Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. We are now in closed session. Judy, I'm sorry to boot you, but we'll be back at 7. You've been kicked out of better places than this. I'll tell you. I don't know where Mr. Murphy is, but thank you for joining us, Kim. About, I would say two weeks ago, Paige Gaffett sent an email to Sven, Neil, and myself. Yeah. Oh, okay. Perfect. Yeah. It's okay. I invited everybody.
The 24th of April is a holiday. Oh, he's not listening.
It'll never make it onto the list. It was, no, it was an exchange actually. Yeah. Yeah. No, I couldn't find anything that involved you. I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. I would entertain a motion to, I did it. Martha, would you make a motion to seal the minutes?
I make a motion to seal the minutes of closed meeting.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye. And no
Fantastic,
motions
thank
were
you.
made- No motions.
No motions were made, et cetera. Then the minutes are sealed, Molly.
I'm sorry?
Millie.
It's gonna, it'll happen forever, sorry. It's just my nature. So is there, we're now on the 7 PM portion of our meeting. Is there any public comment tonight? No? Fantastic. Oh, I should point out that we have 4 people, for folks who are watching from home, 4 people joining us via Zoom. We have our new Director of Human Services, Kim, do I pronounce your last name Einloth?
Yes, that's correct. It's
Yes.
Einloth. Mhm.
We have Solicitor James Callahan, we have Town Planner Allison Ring, and we have avid Yukon Husky fan Nick Solitro, another solicitor.
And this meeting will be done by?
Yeah, right.
Oh, good, good, excellent.
For the record, Counselor Solitro is a Providence College fan. Just
Had a tough week.
Watch those players leave.
We're not playing each other.
Goodness. No public comment. We'll move on to our consent agenda. We have a packet with several minutes. Transfer of a cemetery lot, shellfish closure dates, memorandum of understanding that I would urge people, this is an exciting moment. Probably shouldn't have put it on a consent calendar so that we could all give credit for this, but on the purchase of 2 brand new vans through RIPTA on a very generous federal program, which will enable us to have 2 brand new vans for
About $51,000.
about $51,000. Really an extraordinary thing for the $250,000 worth of vans. Thank you. Yes.
They're taking 80% of the cost.
Yes.
Do you want to use the mic to say that though, so that everybody at home can hear what a great deal it is, David?
The value of the vans is about 250,000 and the cost for the town would be about 50,000.
It's very exciting.
And I think not everybody listened to our budget hearing, so could we explain quickly what they are for?
No.
Yes, we can. Keith. Stop that.
Well, I mean, I think it's, Marianne, please follow up, but I mean, I think it's sort of soup to nuts, everything from rec to seniors to,
Yeah.
Yeah, there'll be an off-island van and we're trying to work with the school to allow them to use it strictly for the transportation of students to athletic and extracurricular events. We will have, one van will be parked or hosted on the mainland and the other one will be here on the island.
And then finally, we have an item of correspondence regarding arcades. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The consent calendar is adopted. Millie, Marianne, would you like to take item number 4, please?
Sorry. Okay, so we're going a little out of order. So what I have before you this evening is the recommendation for the appointment for our new full-time human service director. The woman's name is Kim Iloff, and she is joining us this evening. Kim, if you are there. Kim has over 30 years of experience working with Perspective, which deals mainly with intellectually disabled adults, helping them with all sorts of things from looking for job, benefits, health benefits, also other social needs they may have, applying for SNAP benefits and things of that nature. She will be starting on April 17th. She has a lot of experience working with a lot of agencies on the mainland, state agencies, and she also worked with a lot of federal agencies. The interviewing team consisted of myself, Charlene, Allison Waffle, and Marguerite Donnelly, who is sitting here this evening, joined us in the interview, and it was unanimous to recommend to the council the appointment of Kim as our next human service director.
Kim, are you here?
I am here.
Fantastic. Welcome. Does
Thank
anybody have
you.
any questions for Kim?
Jim, thank you so much. We're excited. This is Sven, and unfortunately, we can't see you up on the screen right now, but we look forward to seeing you on the island as soon as you can get here.
Thank you, Sven. I appreciate the welcome.
Thank you.
Kim, this is Keith Stover. The only, first of all, welcome. I think as I read through your CV, we're thrilled to have you. The question I have is, I'd love to sort of maybe even get your thoughts about what a transition looks like, because there are so many, we have so many people who are receiving some manner of services or participating in some manner of programs that the Senior Advisory Committee is offering, that others are offering. I guess it's just my way of saying, making sure that in the transition that we don't have programs or people falling through the cracks is really important to us. And I know Mary Ann and others have expressed that to you.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, Keith. Really, you took the words out of my mouth. My intention would be to continue whatever is working, whatever needs to be strengthened. We can work on as quickly as is prioritized. And for what we don't have on the island, I'm going to help develop. So my intention would be to make sure that the transition is as seamless as possible. I will spend a good amount of time getting to know people in the community and identify those priority needs as quickly as I can.
Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
Any other questions from the council?
Marianne, for the time being, where is she going to be sitting? Or I'm just thinking about as people want to try and connect with her.
We're looking to work with the land trust that uses that office space over there, next to the council area, and that's what we're looking to do. Land trust is there about 1 day a month. Kim will be back and forth to the island. She has property here, and she'll be back and forth, so.
In this building.
In this building.
Terrific.
Hey, Millie, could I ask you to just clarify? A couple of people asked about, I know there's legislation to change dialing in and being on the phone, but a couple of people asked, why do some people get to speak and others do not? So I don't know if that's. And I meant to bring it up earlier
Do you
today.
want to take that,
No,
Keith?
go ahead.
Okay. It's been a town council policy following the finishing of the code, once we went back to in-person meetings. So we bring in experts, people who have an agenda item, then that can't attend, then we're bringing them in. But as far as the public is welcome to watch on YouTube. And that is something that we are required to do, is provide the YouTube streaming. And then anyone who wants to participate can come and attend the meeting.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, a motion would be in order to accept the recommendation of the town manager for the appointment of the Human Services Director.
So, seconded? Yep.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Congratulations, Kim. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this opportunity to work for the town of New Shoreham. I'm really happy and excited to accept the position and get to work on the 17th. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Item number 5, continued public hearing from 2/6/2023 and 3/6/2023. Discuss and act on proposed amendment to Town of New Shoreham zoning ordinance section 518, accessory family dwelling units. We have Allison Ring and Nick Solitro who have worked on this, and I am going to kick it over to them.
Sure, I'll take it, Keith. Good evening. Nick Solitro. I've been working in conjunction with Allison Ring on this, and just the 10,000-foot view background of this. In June, a new state law went into effect that makes what's before you inconsistent with state law. So our recommendation this evening is actually that you deny what is before you, as to do otherwise would be to act inconsistent with state law, which state law would trump that anyway. So we obviously want our local ordinances to be consistent with that is passed by the legislature. So for tonight's purposes, it's our recommendation, both the planning department through Allison Ring, as well as the legal department, myself and James Callahan, that you deny what's before you. Any questions, I'm happy to help.
Thank you, Nick. Any questions for Nick from the council?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Martha.
Sure.
My question is, we're just denying you're recommending just the changes be denied?
Good question, Martha. So what is before you is an amendment to an existing ordinance.
Right.
what's before you is to take action tonight. Typically, you would expect to pass things that are put before you, especially before staff. So for tonight's purposes, my suggestion is deny the proposed amendment.
So we're just leaving the ordinance intact.
It is in the behind the scenes work is we're either going to redraft this ordinance or start fresh such that this is consistent with state law. We haven't decided which direction we're going to go because of another point that'll be taken up later tonight. There's going to be a lot of change at the state level with regard to housing and accessory dwelling units and the like. So we may just wait from a staff perspective before putting something in front of you. Otherwise, we could put a draft in front of you, have you pass it, and then come June, be changing it again.
I'm experiencing deja vu.
Yeah, so am
I
I.
sound like a broken record, I know, Keith, but it's and I'll say this, and this is not my function, but for a group that appears to collectively want to assist and help a community that has affordable housing needs and accessory dwelling unit needs. It's good to see that you folks are trying to do the good thing for your community in both of those regards. So
Go ahead, sir.
I guess, Nick, and I want to say this to everybody, I am very much in favor of what 518 tries to do. And if that means it's better to wait a couple of months and, figure out the states so that we can then fit within the state, that seems smart. But I just don't want to lose all of the work and all the energy that was spent on this to be able to capture going forward. And I think everybody or many people in the room are all nodding in agreement. So as we move forward, let's really take this and compare against the state and then figure out what else we need to add to make sure we're doing the best we can. And we appreciate all the help you and Allison are doing on that. So thank you.
If there are no further questions, I would accept a motion to deny the proposed amendment to the Town of New Shoreham zoning ordinance, section 518, accessory family dwelling units.
So moved.
Yeah, sure, Chris.
Oh, I just said so moved. Do we get a second?
Sven seconded it. Now it's under discussion.
In that second, do we need to deny or can we just not?
What our solicitor just told us
I know.
is that we should deny.
Okay.
And this fits actually, in my opinion, very well with the conversation we had last week, which is we have a couple of things that are going to be in a holding pattern until we figure out what the state is going to do. I'm going to propose on a later agenda item that we have a work session between now and the end of the legislative session when we have a sense of the direction that the state is going.
Thank you. That's where I was.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Chris Warfel, resident of Block Island. Can you discuss the specifics of where there was incontinuity with the state law? It'd be great to know exactly what the problems were. I realize we're at a crossroads with things that we proposed, and then the state has come in kind of, later with new proposals, but I'm not clear of where the issues are.
Sure. Good question. Nick?
happy to help. So the biggest inconsistency is state law effective June 30th of last year significantly supports ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Prior to that, it was accessory dwelling units could only be used for family members. And that is what 518 on the town level has here. The change in state law opened that significantly and said towns can't discriminate by only allowing family members to live in those ADUs. 518 that sits in front of us, while well-intended when it was originally drafted, draws that discrimination, saying it only in its title, it says accessory family dwelling units. We no longer can have that, what I'll call discrimination, that only family members can live there. Anybody can live there. That's the direction that state law is going. That's the direction I expect will be going. So Chris, the short answer is I expect accessory dwelling units to be far more accessible in the very near future.
May I ask the solicitor a question?
Yes.
Was it because of the title of the ordinance that it was inferred it was for family members? Because I don't have the ordinance in front of me, or was it because there was language within the ordinance that said it was for family members?
Both. What stands out like a sore thumb is the title that it includes family in it. But if it included family and didn't have that discrimination that was inconsistent with state law, I would have no problem with it. So it's also the content of the ordinance itself.
Anything else within that ordinance that you thought you could see as inconsistent?
There's a number of inconsistencies. That's the big one where all the bells and whistles went off and I jumped on the phone with the town planner today and said, we can't act on this.
So this has been before the town for quite some time. And, you know, I have to say this is a surprise. I may be a surprise to you folks, I don't know, but yeah, it would be really good if we would get better feedback on these things.
It was new to me today.
Yeah, there's something wrong in this process where this could go this long. I realize the state law was fairly recent, but this should have been a flare shot up right away. I think, I know there's a lot of stuff going on, but if it was that obviously inconsistent,
I'm going to
it's kind
put,
of a waste
Could
of
I,
resources.
could I
go ahead, Allison.
give some background? Just to clarify, we are speaking about 519, not Chris Warfel's 5,
Right.
and we're speaking of 518.
18.
Yeah,
Not-
518, yes.
Right, I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that. We're speaking about, there was several minor amendments proposed last year. This had come up because we were working on amendments to section 513 that applies to accessory dwelling units for all year-round residents. 518 was another section of the zoning ordinance that applied specifically to family and disabled seniors and disabled family members. So that section, you know, there wasn't because the town has another section of the zoning ordinance that allows accessory dwelling units for everyone. I don't think there was an understanding that having this section, separate zoning section exclusively for seniors and disabled family members that had less restrictions was not consistent with state law. What the proposed amendments that had been before you that are tonight was to strike one sentence that said that they had to be, the family accessory dwelling units had to be within the single family structure versus also being allowed within an accessory dwelling unit. And last year, the state law had changed to say the definition of accessory dwelling units also could be within an accessory structure. So that was the effort last year, was to make 518 consistent with state law by striking that sentence that was now inconsistent with the definition of ADUs in state law. However, there is a question that maybe that section 518 doesn't even need to exist. So that, you know, maybe it just, because we have 513, is 518 necessary? And given, you know, the state law right now, there's a number of amendments related to this in the next few months. It might just be better to just wait and see what happens with state law, and we just come back to it in a few months in the summer and fall and take a look at, you know, the accessory dwelling unit policy, all of it within the zoning ordinance at that time.
I think
So
one of the, yeah, thank you,
that's-
Allison.
yeah,
I think
just
one
a
of the
thought.
things that we agreed to, not smart enough to coin terms, but the term I'll use is active waiting. You know, I think there's a desire across the board. I give the planning board credit for this. I give you credit for this. I give Mary Ann and the town council. There is of course, Chris and the Affordable Housing Board. We're having a moment, and we don't want to lose that moment by having it dip into the fall. And that's why when we get to Chris's proposal, I'm hopeful that we will, while we extend it, also schedule a work session perhaps a series of work sessions or more than one work session where we're keeping a close eye on what's going on at the state, but on a parallel track, doing our own planning about what we would like to see.
I have one, I think, last comment on this. I understand how complicated this is because there are so many ordinances that seem to intersect, parallel, conflict. And, the time may be, as Allison and the council has indicated, to take a step back and wait for the state who supersedes us to come up with what their ruling is. I do think it would be great if we, having read these ordinances quite a bit over the last couple of years, if we could eliminate the redundancy and the conflicts.
Yes.
But I would think that would be such a monumental task that, planning should have taken this on years ago and has not. And so this is just another problem for this one specific
But if I
purpose
can
of
put
ADUs.
if I can put a positive spin on it, here we're having a meeting about this. We have senior members of the planning board. I don't mean by age, I mean by tenure. We have the town council, we have the planner, we have more alignment, I think, toward this than we've had. And I give a great deal of the credit to that for the group that you put together, Chris and Alicia and others. I think there's a seriousness of purpose about this that I don't remember in the past.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Before we vote on the motion that's on the floor, actually, would you withdraw your second? Sen, would you withdraw your motion?
Sure.
And then can I entertain a motion to close the public hearing on this matter?
Second.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Now, a motion would be in order to deny, just to be formal about it, to deny the application to amend the zoning ordinance, I'm on the wrong one. To deny the amendment to the Town of New Shoreham zoning ordinance, section 518, accessory family dwelling units. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that is denied. Now, item 6, receive and discuss update on island-wide traffic and parking strategies. Allison, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Great. Are you going to be able to put it up on the screen? Oh, all right. Yeah, sorry, when you were out, she just put it up, so I didn't know I needed to request when I took that the last time. Sorry.
Thank you, Millie. Let's see. Can we, if there's no objection, can we, Chris, can you come up and we can talk about, oh, we don't have a clerk. That's right. Thank you. I guess there's an objection. We don't have a clerk. I didn't recognize you. I mean, I recognize you. We're just waiting for Millie to come back, so we have a clerk. We don't have a clerk.
Keep moving here.
We did receive a hard copy.
People sitting in the home, it's very difficult to read what's going to go up. That was the experience the last one.
Yes.
It was lucky for me because it was one clerk. And I continued to one day actually have presentations. Wow, really, the material was in the agenda pack.
Yep. You're right.
Thank you.
And I will add to that, that I appreciate that this one is printed in black and white, not yellow print, which probably wouldn't have done you any more good than it did me. I'm glad that this is, what you're going to be getting is printed in black and white, not in various colors, which is great if you've got a great big screen. But if you're trying to read it from a page, yellow on white doesn't really, if we're old like us, Dave. Play that card.
Yeah, it's not on purpose.
It isn't.
Gail, do you have any other tunes on your phone that you'd like to play for us? Who did you threaten? All right, we'll come back to order and Neil will walk us through the work that he's been doing on parking.
All right, so this is just to kind of set the stage of stuff that's been going on since the last time we presented at the town council. And if you remember, for those that weren't there, the ask after going through all the studies through the various years was to come back with recommendations that we could potentially get in place for this year. It was not meant to be a holistic future state. That'll continue to be worked on, but it really was about what we could get done for this year. So with that said, as I started to have conversations, some of the debate was on what the town can actually do, since the majority of the roads are state roads. So did we have the right to actually do any sort of parking restrictions? So it felt like, since there were many different opinions on what were state roads and what were town roads, did the research, Mike Shea was able to validate. So these are the list of what are state roads and what are town roads. And really the easiest way, in a general way, is to say most of the paved roads, except for 3, Weldon's Way, Legion Way, and parts of the dirt roads that are paved at the start, are town roads. All the paved roads are state roads, with those exceptions. So in speaking with the traffic commissioner for the state of Rhode Island, just to clarify what we can actually do, and working with our lawyers, what does it mean to for the town to have the right to do when it comes to parking ordinance on state roads? So we're still validating some of this, but from the commissioner's standpoint, we have the ability to create hourly parking or no parking restrictions anywhere on state roads. We can ticket cars in violation of local parking ordinances, which we're obviously doing. And then we can also raise or change ticket prices without going to the state. When it comes to state roads and we want to do other things, the process would be talk with the town council, follow all the local ordinances, staging requests, and present the proposed changes to the State Traffic Commission. They will then weigh on it and respond to us. The great thing was, I've spoken to him now multiple times. He understands the traffic and parking issues on the island, and he's willing to work with us fairly quickly to get stuff done that goes in front of the Traffic Commission. They, like most committees, they meet once a month. The advantage we have is former Chief Moynihan has actually been appointed by the governor to be on that. So there's seats that are by statute, and then there's one appointee by the governor. So having him on that actually is most likely our advantage. In speaking with Sean, he basically said, since Moynihan has a good perspective on this, if he was aligned with us, then it makes things much easier. Their typical process would be, if it's something easy, they'll approve it in a meeting. If they feel like it's something to approve, they may decide to just come out and visit. And then if it's a more complex need, then it would require probably a study, which they would pay for, not the town. So just kind of setting the stage of where we're at with regard to the various things. We jump to parking ordinances. It kind of moves into prohibition, obviously no parking, parking restrictions, and then authorized parking. So when I met with Mary Ann on this, we realized there's a need to really have a holistic approach to fixing all of it instead of doing piecemeal. So it was time now to really look at all the ordinances, or this ordinance in particular, parking, and make sure it's aligned with all of the current needs, as well as rewriting some of the things. So for example, it states personal property as the start of where no parking's allowed. Those people don't own the house. So just kind of tying up the language to make sure it reflects more specific information. So that way the town lawyers can write the actual ordinance for review. So just kind of highlight prohibition, the no parking areas. We have them all around town, as you know, and some outside of outside of Bridgegate Square. So just so we set the process, is those need to be reviewed. So any change, like you guys are aware, the ordinances has to go through a review, a posting, public hearing. So what I'm working on right now is gathering all the no parking areas on the island and, and aligning them, adding them to the current stuff if they're not there, and then rewriting where possible. So the next steps on this, and pretty much the same as you go to the right, is document all the processes, parking, add to the existing April town council meeting so we can have the next conversation on this, work through the logistics agreement, get agreement to draft the language by legal, and then it would come back. Marianne shared that there's a 3-week posting for public hearing, and then we could go through those. And that would literally be like a line by line review, which the town council would have in advance of the meeting, so they have an opportunity to look at it. Questions so far? So parking restrictions, it's time limited. So this is our 2-hour parking. This is no parking between certain hours of the day. So just again, making sure we're good there, and then gather all the current authorized parking, which is really around the handicap spaces, and making sure we're documented on that. So one of the big things out of the various meetings that I've had with both the town as well as focus groups is the number one thing that they said came up was enforcement. And like town roads and state roads and not knowing the facts, I just wanted to kind of give some anecdotal information and then kind of break down what's really going on based on the help that Marianne and the chief gave us with regard to past ticket data around parking. So the first one is parking enforced? That was asked. How do we know? Doesn't always seem to be consistent. What do the CROs do? Why can't they be ticketing? Well, the fact is they do ticket. So, you know, the people that are raising it, that is part of their role to be able to ticket it. We'll talk a little bit about some of the consistency there. It was confusing. I said this at one other meeting. There was a belief you could go into the police station and cry or scream and they would tear up your ticket. Again, I think the data is going to prove anecdotally that yes, that may have happened, but it's certainly not the norm. Do people actually pay their parking tickets? Yes, we do. In the past, there's a very administrative process, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which Marianne and I talked about. How do we get things online to make it easier for the team as well as the people paying tickets? But it is very admin. So as we look at alternate ways of doing things, one of the things Marianne raised was the concern around the administration that it could create by doing some things differently. So we'll talk about that. Does the town write a lot of tickets? The town follows up on all outstanding parking tickets. So that was some of the folks who work for the town that didn't love the idea that people were saying, we don't enforce parking, we don't ticket, we don't go after, collection. The fact is we do. There is a process in place, and we'll kind of talk about that as well. Can we raise the price of parking tickets to stop bad behavior? That's come up over and over. More recent year, this past summer, there's a belief by many retailers, the town, people are parking all day, that people are jumping on the boat now and leaving for the day, and they're seeing cars there. Again, anecdotal. Workers are willing to pay the ticket. So this was a commonly repeated that workers from the Overlook or elsewhere are jumping in a car together, parking downtown. They're willing to get the one ticket because for $20 they split it and they don't have to worry about biking, walking, last minute getting to work for their shift. So no parking signs that are on Old Town Road, only moved the issue. It didn't solve for parking. So in trying to solve things based on voices raising concerns, what someone was saying is it only moved the problem. So those people believe those cars to be mostly workers, so it just moved them elsewhere, and we really didn't solve anything. And then why don't businesses with parking allow their employees to park? So very few have parking lots, but it is, the national, I did speak to Julie Fuller, and she said specifically, they do have guests who bring cars, having their employees parking in there. The local people who are here, come in to eat or dine, drink, they need the parking for that. So it's probably a fairly common way that businesses are looking at it if they have parking, and many do not. So, questions before we jump to some stats? So the next grid, if you take a look at the, sorry, Millie. So you can see Chief was able to pull data, again, very manual process, but we got the data from 19 to 22. And some of the things are, they just pop out when you look at the different rows. I've highlighted some in red just to kind of highlight them, but there has been consistency in parking and enforcement, except for this past summer. We saw a big dip, so we would average 500 to 600 tickets, probably mostly in the summertime, and we saw that cut in about half. So for those people that are responding to this past season's enforcement, they may be right based on the numbers that they didn't see as much enforcement going on. If you kind of move across the grid, another interesting thing is we do have good collection rate in some years. So you can see getting tickets paid in 19, we got 81%. It fell to 44%, back up to 80%. And then this past year down to 56%. So, on average, you could say the town makes $5,000 to $10,000 on parking tickets. Not that it's meant to be a revenue generating activity, but it does generate revenue. And you could see that in 2022, just based on less parking tickets issued, we generated less income. The other thing to disprove some of the thought around voided tickets was you could see there really has been consistency on voiding tickets at a low number. So you can see probably on average, it's less than 5%. And in speaking to the chief, he actually thought that was relatively low in comparison to maybe what other municipalities are doing. So kind of little disapproval of some of the everyone's going in and screaming and yelling and getting what they want. So maybe they don't do it. Maybe only the ones that are doing it get it. But certainly the voided tickets would prove that we haven't been making a ton of exceptions. Collection rate varied, and current process is highly administrative, paper-based. So some of the things that the chief and I and Marianne had spoken about were a continued commitment for the police to direct the CSOs around parking tickets, also being downtown specifically as they have been at the ferry landing times. We also talked, for those that are at the budget meeting, about the CSOs. There was a decrease in the number of people, a number of heads that they put in this year's budget. And based on, so there were 8 previously, they took it down to 6. And based on some of the feedback from the chief is they feel like 6 is the better number, that they can get what they need done with that number, and that 8 was at times hard to manage. And subsequently, chief has a plan on how to better manage them, utilize them during the time they're, on the books. Anything, Chief, you want to add to that? Great. In talking about, more administrative, moving ticketing from the police station to town hall. Mary Ann didn't love the idea that had come up by someone, but came up with the idea of how about doing a drop box. And the concern was not about where to go. The concern that people raised was the dispatchers are taken off focus on being a dispatcher, and they're having to deal with people that come to the window. So how can we make their job easier? So a couple people had proposed, could we move it to town hall? And based on, the type of ticket and everything, it probably does make sense that it stays at the police station. So he's working on creating that drop box. One of the things that also came up, and this is why, had I known what I know now, and that the people say it takes an act of Congress, the hoops and information you got to dig through to get a good handle on stuff does take time. So when we were talking about I cry, my ticket gets ripped up, there is a appeal process that really hasn't been utilized, and we're researching it. There's something on the books that Millie was good enough to pull out called the Warden's Court, and we're not sure of all the rules along that, but ideally it would allow Keith to be a bit of a night court justice without any legal background, which I'm sure he's thrilled about.
Donnelly and Lewis are sharing a cell.
No, actually, Keith and Sven both.
All right.
It gets worse.
Okay. All right. Okay, I asked lots of people and no one could.
No,
Like
not,
to
I don't
find.
think heavily. With bail commission, it's not the same thing as Warden's Court. They're two different things. Warden's Court has been used not very much in a very long time.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Okay. And then one of the things just around tickets in general is we don't have any tie to DMV. And is there a potential to work with the state to get that? So, there's a little more hook to the ticket. So we'll be exploring that. Next page.
When you were getting these numbers, the DMV is what made me think of it. Do you have any percentages, does the police department have any percentages on how many of the tickets are in-state and out of state?
It's a very manual process, but I don't know.
I know that. I just didn't know if you looked at it. Yeah, because I'm just thinking of the cars that I see, lots of them are out of state plates. And, it seems like a really great idea until you think, oh gosh, New York. Anyhow, that was just a.
Yeah.
Future goals.
So for those on the phone, the chief had said there's no good way to pull the data for what Martha was asking about out of state versus in state.
It's all Connecticut.
All right, so then other parking items, and this is where the town council needs to start thinking, because as we prepare to rewrite or write ordinances, the ordinance around parking, there is some stuff on the books that we just need to clarify that it's still directionally where we want to be. So the first item is it talks about the peak season for parking being May 15th to October 15th. So I think the groups that I've met with agree that that's probably good dates. It's just a matter of, having discussion, open discussion on it.
Mm-hmm. That's how the existing ordinance works. It defines a peak season. Thank you.
No comments? All right, keep moving. Yep. Please come to the microphone. Thanks, Gary.
Gary, identify yourself just for the record. Thank you.
So I couldn't help but notice, so we're ticketing why, but, and less people know it's being enforced, and all day. And staff, mentally, park all day, we can, customers can.
Yep.
Anyway, it's just, I don't know exactly, they didn't pick on their own. Told them the policy was summer.
Well, so the good thing is that was the interim chief and we have a new chief who is going to be focused on it. So. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So, Mary Ann, you might want to guide me here. So Sven just asked a good question. Is this meant for discussion now? Or is it, and Keith,
Personally, I think you should go through these.
okay. I mean, I
Uh,
put only these because I thought we should discuss them.
It flags out, whatever, 7 issues that we, that we need to have on our agenda when we're
Okay.
talking about particularly ordinance changes. And I think it's important for the residents who are here, people who would watch, people who are talking about it in the newspaper, et cetera, to know these are the things we're looking at, multiple ticketing. That would be, a significant policy change. But if we're getting serious about this, then, that's something we need to do, perhaps. But that would be my.
All right, so then I'll just go line by line. So latest creation or latest iteration of the tow lot. My point here is, and Keith, you or
Mhm.
whoever can share, is there would be no referencing of a tow lot. So that's one thing for the ordinance, but it would also be coming up with a process on, payments and all of that.
Sure,
As
yeah.
well as, when you get towed, that sort of thing.
Right. Marion, you're in the midst of conversations with Ripta on that, right?
Correct. Just so you know, really quickly, the tow,
Excuse me, Ryak.
okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm in communication with RIAC. They have to bring this before the FAA. So it's unfortunately taken a little more time than we had hoped.
Like I said, an act of Congress to get.
Can I, but if we're discussing this, is booting an option by the town? I mean, if a tow lot's not available, there's the second best idea, or maybe even better because everybody sees it.
Yes. So there were lots of conversations around this, and I actually volunteered to put my car down there and they could boot, because I'm sure if someone saw a boot, they would stop parking longer than, and they could tow my car around if they wanted to be the example. But yes, it came up multiple times, and it kind of goes tandem with, if we're doing, if we're setting an ordinance around the number of parking tickets not paid, does that become the boot? Does that become a tow? It's certainly, there's some feelings that boots would make it look more like a police state than maybe we want people to feel. That's a discussion we'd have to have. Yeah, no, thank you for raising.
I'd love to hear at some point, Chief, your thoughts around towing and booting. Not and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but both tools that are kind of shine a bright light on on parking scofflaws. So yeah, right, exactly. But it just would be interesting to hear what you have to say about it.
Discuss multiple ticketing and prohibited and restricted parking areas. So, and this goes back to what Sven just said. Right now, if you get a ticket downtown, you get one ticket and you could be parked there all day. So my question is, do we want to do, if the CSOs are going around every 2 hours and chalking tires, then should they be giving multiple tickets in a given day if people are leaving their car there? So again, discussion point.
Yes, I like that idea. I think it's worth.
The next one would be address current parking ticket price for those that were at the last meeting. Nick, the town lawyer, did share he had done some quick looking while we were talking, and the fines range from $20 all the way up to I think $85, with most of them in the $35 to $45 range. Pretty strongly, people felt in the various focus groups around taking the parking and making it a serious fine of $50, which I would agree with. I think Marianne and the chief and I talked, they're on board with that. The question though becomes, all right, it's $50. Now, if you're doing escalating tickets, then that's 150 if they stay there for 3 days. You know, are we skinning the cat too many times? And do we just start with a $50 fee, see if that changes behaviors? Or do we want to layer on something, or vice versa? Do we want to leave the ticket price at $20 and we do multiple ticketing? So there's all different ways to look at it. So it would be a discussion that.
And again, I mean, I'd love to hear what the chief thinks about, I'm sure there's ample research on dissuading overstay at parking and sort of what techniques work and what don't. You know, it's not my area of expertise, but we should.
So I know in Newport, when I looked at their parking, they have a lot of different parking penalties for different parking areas. So let's say if you park in a handicap spot and you don't have a handicap tag, you get a much higher ticket. You don't get the $20 ticket. You're automatically getting like a $75 ticket. If you were to park in an area that is specific to certain areas, like, so if you parked in like the fisherman's parking area, you know, without the hang tag to be if you're not a fisherman, that could be a much higher fee.
Yeah.
I know at that first meeting that we had as a new council with department heads, and we met with the head of the roads, and he said he's having a really difficult time cleaning, street sweeping in the summer for the number of people who park overnight on Water Street, and said that it would really help him if we ticketed. So basically, in order to like curb that, we would have to have a police officer go with the street sweeper and ticket, like, and hopefully that would cure that behavior. But that would want to be a higher ticket because, you know, you've got 2 people getting out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning for this. Like that's a higher ticket. It also, you know, obviously the signage would have to be there. But anyway, just
Great.
an idea, right? That we would have
yeah.
different ticket rates for different
Sure,
offenses.
Yeah, the only caution I'd say there for the CSO, I mean, there's a process we would have to build in for them too, and changing the ticket. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. So
One
back to you.
one quick thing, I think it's the chief who does everything with the CSO, is not us necessarily, but a question to Nick. Nick, I know some towns have escalating rates for continuous abusers. So in other words, we talked a lot about 1 day, 2 day, 3 days stacking tickets, but what about the person who now has 25 tickets in 40 days?
Well, that's the
Um,
next bullet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that gets to your point. I think it was you, Sven, who raised it, of a boot or a tow or something along those lines. If that's the type of escalation you're talking about.
I guess I'm.
So you're talking.
I'm not talking
if they
about
don't-
paying on time. I'm talking about like the person gets a ticket on Monday, leaves, comes back Wednesday, gets a ticket, comes back Friday, gets a ticket. In the span of 45 days, they've got 30 tickets. I'm making it up. Is there, I know some towns have an escalating abuser rate, but I don't know if that's legal in Rhode Island or not.
Well,
You know what?
the would be they'd be supporting the town with an awful lot of money, but
I want to get more money.
Right. My first question to you was, are they paying those tickets? The next question is, I haven't seen a habitual offender ordinance in Rhode Island. If anybody's aware of one, I'm happy to look at it and happy to explore that option if we are seeing these habitual offenders.
Mm-hmm.
would you
I think
tend?
there are. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Nick. I think there are some.
Okay.
There are some that are just infrequent, but there are definitely some that work downtown and, you know, whatever.
Yeah, in my research, Fen, I'll keep an eye out for that. Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you.
One
So-
thing that excuse me one second,
that's
Neil, but I'm glad we have so many people here tonight because I do think it bears sort of pointing out as you go forth. This is a significant cultural change. You know, it is. And I think you have a new chief who has a seriousness about it. Clearly, the town manager does, and you know, I can sort of get a sense that the town council does as well. And that's based on a lot of feedback that we get every day from folks around these issues. But it's going to honk some people off, and I think we need to be prepared for that when we take these steps. I happen to be, but yes. Hi, Jim.
Hi.
How are you?
I have a question is, with the limited amount of parking in town, where do the workers park for Ballards or Harvestad or National? I mean, they need a place to park their cars for what, 8-hour shift, or maybe sometimes they work a double. So is there a place designated for the workers where they can park their car safely and not get a ticket? Or is there any land available around town where maybe it could be designated just for workers?
Well, so we're going to talk about some land options, so we can factor that in to the discussion.
Go ahead, Sasha.
You're making me think, Neil.
Okay.
So the question in my mind.
Identify
is-
yourself, Sasha. Just
Oh,
for the
Sasha
record.
Cohen, Chapel Street. So the question in my mind is the parking problem a result of people who take advantage of this, of what's available? Or is the parking problem a result of simply a lack of parking spaces that workers need? Or is it a result of tourists? In other words, if we don't create any more parking spaces, but we do find a strategy to enforce the parking rules,
Mhm.
will that solve the problem?
It's one of those things, I think we have to test it and see if it does solve it. I think it's a combination of what you've said, though.
Hmm,
So it is people parking with no regard to,
yeah.
it is what was the second one you said was employees parking.
Mhm.
So it is an issue. Is enforcing the 2-hour parking going to change it? I think there'll be a change in behavior that it does free up more space, but it could be we're moving the problem, which is
Right.
why we're looking at all the ordinances or all the different things in the ordinance to
Mhm.
make sure it aligns with what we're trying to solve for.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
And I think I just want to add to what Neil said, that right now we're not creating much of an incentive to find another solution for people. So to what Jim said, they come down, they find a place to roost their car for 8 hours or 10 hours, but in that 8 hours or 10 hours that their car is solidly fixed someplace, that is not a moving spot for tourists, locals, people who want to come downtown and have lunch, go shopping, get a cup of coffee. So they don't come downtown. So it would be really cool to see this cultural shift where it's on the employee to find the more creative solution, to get a ride to work, to do a carpool, to ride a bike, to, catch a ride, take a taxi, whatever it is. And then open up those parking places to people who would be moving that parking place all day and supporting businesses.
I'm getting the same texts.
Gary Pollard, I forgot to mention. One thing, the only time I've gone to the station to ask to have a ticket voided was when the transition from whenever you decide what the dates of enforcement should start and end, it would be great if they actually were put on the street, the no parking signs, like Newport does, and I think other seasonal towns do, because occasionally, all the people that work and have businesses on Water Street or in town are just parking until they know, and when the 2-hour regulations
Yep.
start, but it's never been a fixed date. So that would
Good
be
point.
helpful if it was on the signs.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, until you provide some kind of parking lot somewhere, you should be careful how much you raise the parking fines and such, because I think, people don't have an option.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Yes, they do. They're free
Chris?
bicycle. Yes.
Chris Warfel, if the employees are really contributing to the problem, which I think they are, and they actually inhibit, I'll say, people here in the summer from patronizing the businesses, is it possible to have a system where we can disincentivize workers to take their vehicles downtown through some kind of reduced cost to use public transportation? Whether it's through a taxi or through some kind of public transportation system, where if you have a card that says you're an employee, that you get a reduced rate to incentivize them again to not use their car. I don't think it should be free, because everybody who commutes has to pay money, but it's an idea. And I'm wondering if going forward, if the police could look at if it's out of state versus in state, as Martha had suggested, for who are the people that are violating the parking ordinances. Because if it's in state, I can see trying to meld with DMV. If it's out of state, I don't think many out of state DMVs are going to do anything with Rhode Island's parking ticket issue. However, an idea for consideration, and please don't shoot me, if it's out of state or in state and you have a parking ticket, you cannot put your car on the ferry. I know that's a huge stretch and a lot of legal implications, and it would be shot down pretty quickly, but it is teeth in something that is it is a problem in this town. Thank you.
Neil,
No, you don't let them put their car back on the ferry. Then they really pay.
I know you're still going through the list, but I think I was thinking the same thing that Chris just went through, which is how do we handle parking? And the one thing that I think mirrors this is how do we, whether it's incent or how do we create ability to not have as many cars trying to park? So I think there's twofold ways here. One is increase the whatever everything you're talking about here. The other is how do we help people not need that? So I think there's two elements to it, and this is great.
All right, so then, so we can get moving. Escalating ticket fee.
One
So th-
second, Neil. Mary
Sorry.
Anderson.
Oh,
wants to
sorry,
speak.
Mary. Oh, thanks.
I just want to say I spent a lot of time on Water Street in the summertime, and it's great to hear all this feedback and see this very super helpful information. I think another source of information people can use that street for businesses, if you can get information from them, usage. Word spreads really fast in the street, the parking tickets are going for $50. And that could be helpful, but I really would spend that. And with Sophie's comment earlier, and other people have said this too, are you just moving the problem? And
Yeah, definitely. Probably more than two.
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think people don't necessarily always want to do the wrong thing. I just want to say that because I spend a lot of time in the street. People gee, I do have to rush from the ferry and I can know where to go. I don't want to park in the street. So,
Yep.
but I've heard this before. I don't want to do this, but I have to leave my car somewhere. because
Yep.
I'm gonna take my kid to the doctor or whatever.
Yep.
So I think generally a lot who live the problem, if we could have for solutions to the problem, that would really complete this circle. To Molly's point, it makes sense for Newport to have these different levels of parking. Their Newport, it's very small, but it's very differently
Yeah. Yes.
dense place. So,
Yes.
if there's some way to reach out to people on the street who are going to the front, I think we get it a lot.
Right.
And it's for
Yeah. So the escalating tickets, so this is again, and I think Mary just touched on it. So sometimes when you do something, there's unintended consequences, and that's how some of these things are so linked with tying together the increase in ticket price, an escalating ticket when you're not paying. Those are all things you kind of have to land on the direction we're going in order to be able to address some of the other things. So, and then the last one is there is nothing currently that says no overnight parking in the ordinance. So is that something that should be addressed?
Did you, is that I thought that was a state law.
Could
I
be.
thought you weren't supposed to park overnight on public roads, public state roads. I know
Um,
we've been told that in the
I'm not
past.
aware of that, but it could be the case.
Nick or
unless it's
James, would you
listed
take
in
a
the-
look at that, please?
Sure.
Thank
But,
you.
but we would certainly want to change the language on the signs to accommodate for the street cleaning
Yep.
3 days a week.
Yep, absolutely.
Nobody's going to be able to keep track of that. You just
I know
do
it-
it across the board.
But
I
But
know,
when you-
New Harbor's a problem too.
I now know in Providence, you couldn't have a park overnight. Now you can get not a permit, but a ticket to be able to park overnight. You have to get that.
Well, Newport has this whole convoluted level, I think convoluted, but they have to because they are so, I think the word dense was just used, are tightly built with restrictions and who has permits and what day you can use them. And I would just move to Middletown.
Lots of places solve this with signs. Like people just have to read them.
So
I
Millie,
think
we
it'll be okay.
can move to the
They could
land
Drive,
purchase.
I'm sorry, Neil.
Oh,
I
sorry.
guess they literally can drive to another town. You can't here.
All right, so one of the other big topics, again, through all the different studies as well as the most recent groups that have been chatting on this, had thrown out 3 different opportunities for the town to explore. So these are the first 3 or the 3 that I put on here. So you would have the sewer plant lot up above the post office. There is a lot, Ned Phillips currently has the lot that runs west to east. There is a small piece of land not currently being used that sits east of the post office. And again, potentially creates an opportunity for some additional 2-hour parking for the town, maybe to the gentleman who raised, maybe this becomes employee parking. Those would all be open, but if we don't have the land to do something, then it's hard to solve some of the additional needs. So one of the things that so in this conversation, I talked to Dylan at the sewer department. Sorry, I didn't know his last name. Peter McNerney as the board president, Ned Phillips as the abutter, and Kim Gaffett as the Ocean View Foundation, as she would be a abutter as well. So Dylan was open to the idea with the thought that longer range plans will include affordable housing there. So this wouldn't be infinitum, but it would get us through, be an option for at least a number of summers. Peter McNerney shared he's open to the idea as well. He would have to run whatever proposals we come up with by the board. And Ned Phillips welcomed the opportunity to work with us as well. His conversation with me was, so it would basically, if you think of the parking lot lengthwise, it would be the bottom of an L would be where the current parking is a possibility. That would then have people driving more frequently through his entire lot, parking in the lot to the side. So I did propose to him, if this were to go forward, would he be willing to give us front spots close to the Baptist church for the town parking metered, and he takes the spot in the back. So he's open to that discussion, but that would alleviate some of the stress of driving through his entire lot to get to the town parking portion. Questions?
No, I think go through these.
Okay.
Neil, and because we're going to have a broader conversation around whether there's a willingness among folks in town to acquire or pay for parking for, and I'm not sure where I stand on
Yeah.
but these are three things that we should go through.
So then, and this wasn't, none of these are to buy, these are all lease options. So, and then, so the next steps, again, just kind of going through the channels that need to happen, approval from town council, to continue the discussions, work with the interested parties on what it would look like, confirm the number of spots in this particular lot, which would be using one of the engineers that Mary Ann has used in the past. People have raised CRM might have some visibility on this, so we would just need to know if that, in order to get the grass lot into a parking lot, will we have to go through any hoops there? Prepare a bid, negotiate the lease, start the work, add to parking ordinances, and implement parking. So that would be one option. Second option is I talked to Father Joe at the Catholic Church about leasing his lot Monday to Friday, not on Saturdays and Sundays. He is open to it. His board or council, it's the parish council, he said same thing, come back to me with what the town's looking at. I'm willing to look at options. Charlene's not here. He said, if you can get Charlene to donate her lot to me, then I'll do whatever the town wants. I said, good luck with that. So, so again, same thing would be opening this conversation to continue the conversation with Father Joe and his group, working with Mary Ann and probably again an engineer, because you'd have to devise how that would work, even Monday to Friday where there's not church parking or as much need. There has to be designed the right way so people aren't backing into each other and whatnot. So, and then the last lot is actually Charlene's lot, which is just west of the Catholic Church lot. She is also open to it. I had a brief conversation with her a little over a month ago, but given she works for the town and she works for Mary Ann, we decided that I would deal with Jennifer Phillips. So I talked with her today about what we're trying to solve for, and working with her as we go forward, if in fact we decide that this is something we want to pursue. So I will pause there.
So I'll give you my take on this. But before I do, I have to say, this is an extraordinary amount of work, and I really
That's
really
terrific.
appreciate it. It's really that kind of energy and attention to this has been, I think, really contributes. Now, I think there are things that are in our bailiwick in terms of policy changes, which you focused on, which are the ordinance changes that we would need to make and put before the public and before ourselves to make those decisions. And then there's a bit of a brighter line between that and things like acquiring property, establishing enforcement regimes and protocols, et cetera, that fall squarely with Mary Ann, the chief, et al. And, I think one of the things that I would like is, and this just speaking for myself, is a sense relatively soon around what the timeline would would need to be to do some ordinance changes prior to, say, Memorial Day. And perhaps, Mary Ann, I don't know about if you're agreeable to this, but perhaps schedule on one of our agendas over the next several for you and whomever from your staff, presumably the chief, would like to talk, about some of these kind of some short-term kind of thoughts about enforcement and some longer-term thoughts about parking general. Does that make sense to you? I just want to make sure we're drawing, there's some of this stuff that is policy making by us, but there's some of this stuff that we're looking, you have a sense of where we are. And
So the chief and I have already started that conversation with enforcement and next steps. And some of our short-term and some are long-term, which include more of an automated ticketing process that will not happen until next summer. But as far as the policy piece of it, there is a timeline here that is the last slide. However, the one item is the town council taking a vote would probably be in early June,
okay.
which would have definitive things for the council to do in the next 4 to 6 weeks. And once those policies are in place, it makes it a lot easier for the enforcement
That
and
makes
everything
sense.
else like that. So the signs will say May 15th to October 15th, if that's the vote that is
Right.
taken and what's
Gotcha.
in the ordinance. One of the huge things that Neil and I discussed in the beginning and the chief recognized relatively soon after he came on board is without the ordinance,
Right,
there's
right.
no
Right.
enforcement. And I agree, Neil has done a ton of work and he clearly recognized that the leverage of getting the ordinance in place and going from there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so be careful what you wish for because you're gonna get a spreadsheet with like lines and lines of data. So let's jump to, go ahead, sorry.
And build on that for a second, because I agree on the swim lanes thing and I think this other parking related items is a really good punch list as we
Yes,
as we
yeah.
think through those, and I think we've all had the discussion. Hold on one second. As we go through it, plus, land acquisition is a whole different thing, but I think many of these and many of the topics that we discussed is a great beginning to ordinance. And I just do want to really reinforce that line between policy and staff. And at the end of the policy, we can direct the town manager to do that kind of thing, and then.
But we needed a body of
Yeah.
work like that
Yeah.
in order
Without
to get
this,
to a
we would
point
not be
where
there.
where we're having these conversations. And
Yeah.
David?
David Lewis, Coonamus Road. I'd just like to remind the group of where we've been in this manner before, not with space to park cars, but for rooms for summer workers. I would preface those remarks by saying that at this point on Block Island's history, Block Island's current condition, I'm not sure if council wants to get into the business of subsidizing people to park. And even worse, subsidizing businesses so their employees can park. And the parallel to that discussion goes back to the 50s and 60s when all the summer hotels had housing for their workers. And that worked successfully in the community for that period in time. When you got into the early 70s, it started to change. And ultimately, we ended up by the time we got to the mid 80s, where almost every piece of employee housing that was associated with all of the major hotels and many of the restaurants had been turned into revenue exercises. And those workers were all left to fend for themselves. And fast forward to today, it's one or more orders of magnitude worse. We honestly probably don't have a clue where all these people live and would be embarrassed or disappointed once we learned. So the message really is, businesses have to go get back into the business of standing on their own 2 feet on things that may in fact be their responsibility. I don't think the town has a luxury to be subsidizing those kinds of things when we've already made the decision to subsidize housing for not only year-round residents, but also seniors and other organizations. You know, the list would be endless. And we need to, not to mention the capital budget that we discussed last meeting, which goes out 10 years and beyond in the tens of millions of dollars. So I just wanted that to remind the community of that. And the last thing I would say, if I can just remember it, well, I'll come back another time
Okay.
when my memory's.
So can I just clarify, when you say subsidized, was that, what was that? Because I didn't have anything in here. What were you referring to as a recommendation? to
Somebody used
subsidize?
several people, or at least one person used the word incentivize, and it took those words to be almost equivalent.
Okay,
I also think that if the town were to buy or lease a piece of property with 2-hour metered parking, that comes with a cost to the town. Ultimately, the coins going into the meter would be consumed by the enforcement organization that needs to enforce that. So that's a subsidy. So I think we need to think very hard about that. You know, other far-fetched ideas could be such things as a business hiring cabs to ferry their peoples to work. I mean, Molly mentioned that earlier in the evening, and I'm a big favor of user fees and employers hiring cabs or subsidizing their employees to hire a cab is a move in the better direction. So there's 1,000 things to talk about in that arena
Yep.
for another night. Thank you.
Jim Rondanoni, Beacon Hill. Just one thought, I don't know if this property is still called by this name, but the Soul Beacon property next to the beachhead. I don't know how big that lot is, but there's always, because as a cab driver, I go by there all the time, and there's always cars sitting eating lunch or whatever. But I thought, if that's a big lot, is it an acre, 2? I really don't have no idea.
so
Has
that,
anybody thought about that?
so it's owned by the Conservancy and the Land Trust, and I'm going to be on their agenda to talk about it. I had an initial conversation as they were breaking out of a meeting, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of appetite for the town to be involved in that. I think at another meeting, they did raise the concern that they have a lot of employees parking there from the beachhead, and that they want to figure out a way to solve that. So I had said enforcement could be something if we were to put something that was on the rotation for the CSOs. But at this point, I'm on their agenda, and we'll see if there's any further interest. But thank you. Yep.
Neil, you want to do these?
Yeah, so then, speaking with the chief, it's just continued to manage the ferry landing at the arrivals, ensure the state. So this was a big one that came up over and over, and one of the groups I spoke with, the Respect Block Island group, feels strongly, as do others, that we have a big amount of money coming from the state for 15 million on roads, and making sure we're having whatever input. And Marion and I talked about this, so the public information is we may not get a whole lot of input based on what Marion has said. It's really state driven. Yes, we'll be involved, but at the end of the day, they'll make the decisions. But the group is basically saying, let's not miss the opportunity to do further information, right? So they're like, okay, you're working on the immediate future for this summer, but there needs to be the bigger plan, which will continue to draw out. I like the fact that they drew in the 15 million is important, because whatever that looks like could be something that fits into some of the scheme of what the town wants to do, solving something completely unrelated at this point. So, and then the one thing that we had on, which again, speaking to the traffic commissioner. So this, because it's traffic flow, the town can't change. So town can't change stop signs, yield signs. Those do have to go to the traffic commission. So this movement to return for those that have been here long enough. There used to be a no left turn on Chapel Street going onto Water Street. For those that were here, Bill McComb said, yeah, we put it up. He's like, I don't know if I was still the police chief or not, but one year it just didn't go back up and no one said anything, so we never put it back up. But it is from multiple folks and comments, it is a bit of a hazard at that corner. It's a bit blind when you're looking left and trying, you have now walkers coming, and then with having the taxi lanes there, it also is troubling for them to be able to get across, whether they're coming from Chapel Street or making the left into the lot. So there's a lot going on right there. So the proposal was to move that to a no left turn. Again, can be defined on the same dates, May to October, and the rest of the year we don't need to worry about it. But obviously this would be discussion start for this, and then what I can say is the traffic commissioner did say this particular, I threw it out as one of the ideas so we could get an idea of what we were looking for, and he said this seems like a no-brainer. I did speak with Matt Moynihan 2 days ago saying this would be one of the things, would he support it? And they pretty much said if he's in agreement, it's rubber stamp, doesn't need a visit, doesn't need so it would be just a memo to them for their next meeting. So
Can I ask a question of Mary Ann? How would that get operationalized? Would you like us to do a resolution saying we would like this to happen? You know, I'm just, I don't have a.
So the
particular-
Chapel Street left-hand turn,
Yeah.
I assume you refer to, absolutely, a vote from the council, because in the letter we would say it's a vote from the
Oh,
council
okay,
coming
gotcha.
forward.
That's helpful to know.
Because that's how we ended up doing Baby Beach and
Right,
the
right.
crosswalk.
Yep. Terrific.
all right, so then the final thing was really the timeline, and Keith asked the question. So I wanted to make sure we backed into dates that we can actually get this done, and before the rush gets here, have clear plans. So, you know, this is the initial conversation. Coming back the week of the 17th, lawyers need a week to do the draft. Back to the town council on May 3rd for the set the public hearing, and then the 7th. And then Mary Ann, I didn't ask what happens after the 7th. So public hearing happens, we vote, and then it's done.
And then if it's voted in the affirmative, then it's done.
Okay.
But at that point, we would have to get the signs up and installed and stuff like that. So
Right.
Can I make
you
a,
won't see the signs the next day.
I have a suggestion on the, as it relates to the timeline, and that is, you have identified 6 areas here. Defining peak season in the ordinance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of which have a potential ordinance impacts. Defining peak season in the ordinance, or continuing to define it. Discussing multiple ticketing in prohibited or restricted parking areas. Addressing the parking ticket price. Discussing the possibility of an escalating ticket fee when not paid on time, and discussion of overnight parking. And in my opinion, those are all worthy of ongoing conversation. And you know, I want to hear more, and I would love to see language around what those would look like. And I don't know whether it helps to accelerate for us to be engaged with Nick and James on those things that are sort of ordinancy sooner rather than later. The fact that something gets drafted or outlined doesn't mean that, you know, we'll have unanimity on it. But if we wait another 2 weeks, it seems to me we're pushing ourselves up against, you know, a deadline. So if we're thinking, yeah, I mean, I would like to talk about what our ticket prices are. I'd like to see, for example, what do some analogous towns do in terms of multiple ticketing on a particular day? what does a no overnight parking look like? And, how do people react to that? So it just seems like we could short circuit 2 weeks by starting to engage in that conversation about what ordinances like this would look like.
Yep.
Does that make sense to people to?
And who do you see involved in that?
Well, obviously, obviously Nick and James, but, I think you should, you've done a lot of work on this. I think Mary Ann should, I think the chief should. And if there's a desire to have somebody else from the table involved, that's great. But for me, I don't feel, I feel like this is progressing, and I don't have any particular, ideas about how this ought to look. I think we may, when we see sort of a skeleton of what
Yeah.
an ordinance
Yep.
might look like. Go ahead, Sven.
Two things.
Yeah.
Because I brought it up and I don't know whether that would be in the chief's role on his own, or we need to fit it into this discussion of ordinances on booting or other alternatives. I just
Yeah.
don't know
Yeah.
whether that's a
Right.
tool that we need to discuss strategically
Yeah.
or policy wise.
Well, and
And then,
yeah.
sorry.
So
And
no,
then
no.
the last thing is, I really think the idea of having some bullets to frame these up versus starting to write ordinances. Some people have tendency, there's a tendency to write an ordinance, and we should just discuss the meat.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
so two different things, and some of it factors in. So it's an ordinance for all the parking rules, meaning the
Mhm.
no parking, that sort of thing. But these aren't reflected somewhere right now so those would have to be like its own other discussion, because again, I don't have this spreadsheet shared because I'm still working on it, but it basically says for everyone to be able to review current ordinance as it's written today, if it just needs a rewrite. So for example, it says from Transu's house to the end of the street. Well, it needs to be clear what that means. So that could be rewritten, and then it's just reviewing it. But there is stuff that's not in any ordinance anywhere with
Mhm.
regard to just really tactical review of this town streets, right? So there's nothing that lists no parking on Corneck Road from Kittens to Baby Beach. I'll make that up.
Mhm.
So, and that's an easy brainer. What I've done on the sheet is highlight what's there today. So you can say, all right, there's signs saying no parking from this to here.
Mhm.
Agree to that. Because what I didn't want to happen is we get bogged down and we don't approve one piece of the parking puzzle.
Sure.
And then we're stuck with all these other things
Right.
waiting. So
Yes.
if there's debate on maybe there should be parking at Baby Beach, just pull it out and keep moving
Right,
forward.
right.
And,
One of the things that I think would be helpful, Marianne, is if there's anything that you've seen, where you said over the last couple of years, I can't believe they don't have a parking ordinance that X or Y or Z. And similarly, from the chief, if you, as you sink your teeth further and further in, if there's anything you've seen that's sort of like, God, I can't believe they never did an ordinance on X or Y or Z. I'd like to know that.
The biggest thing that I saw probably after a year or so here, was the fact we had little to no parking ordinance, and we had signs all over.
Mhm.
And when I spoke to Nick about that, he said, I'd rather see it in an ordinance because that gives
Mhm.
the enforcement
Yeah,
the ability. So I think
Right.
the steps we're taking now are huge,
good,
are huge.
great.
And we probably will continue in the coming
Yeah,
years.
right.
all right, here's a little trivia for you. What's the speed limit in town? It's 20. That's written in the current ordinance. Rest of the island, 25. So anyway,
I have something
Please,
else.
please.
I'm glad to see Kim Gaffett still here. There's something we're gonna have to come to grips with that nobody wants to ever talk about. And the Corneck Road parking brought it up. And I noticed it today, especially. we've basically lost not the parking, because we didn't have parking, but we've lost the walkway because of the dunes. We're losing, the beach parking lot seems to be and that's my thing is the beach parking lot. That seems to be a losing battle. And we started cleaning out the beach parking lot. Is that why? Is that what's going on?
Yes.
But unless there's we keep saying we can't park here, we can't park here, we can't park here. Oh, we don't have any parking, we don't have any parking. You can't have it both ways. I know other people in the audience have said that already, but it's true. And it's all good and well to talk about having a tow lot, but more parking is just going to give us more cars. Then we're not going to have any more space. And I don't mean to sound negative. I've just been here a long time. And I'm really, really appreciative, Neil, of the fact that you took the time, the effort to look at these things and realize it's not just like me mouthing off, that some of it's real. But this whole, like years ago, I talked to CRMC about trying to get a bit more parking at Scotch Beach to try to get parking off Corn Neck Road. And then you come up against, well, where are we? What are we going to do with that? CRMC doesn't want to enlarge the parking lot. So we've got us parking on Corn Neck Road that, I don't know why everybody's complaining about that. That's real. I don't drive it much in the middle of the day, but that's a brutal road up to Scotch Beach. And I'm amazed I'm more amazed that we haven't had trouble there than in town, because in town, you at least have an awareness that there are people around you and you have to be careful. And on the Neck Road,
Absolutely
people
true.
can just dart out between cars in a different way than they would on the Neck Road.
And kids on bicycles.
Exactly.
It's,
Yeah.
it's where you have the multiple layers that are.
So I think what I just would urge
And that weird
against,
crosswalk.
yeah, against holistic and just try to really focus on the places that can be dealt with. And I think that's what we're talking about, and not get sidetracked by, well, let's not spend the money on the paving because maybe in 15 years we'll have a better plan for the roads. That's
right.
I drove Old Town Road today. It needs to be paved.
Just as long as Beacon Hill isn't.
Don't go there anyway. It's like Sleeping Beauty's forest.
I don't know
Freaks
how
me
many,
out.
I don't know how many more times I can say thank you, Neil, but thank you. This has a feeling of moving in a really good direction, and I appreciate the work that you did.
Okay, so just to be clear, so next steps, I will meet with Mary Ann and the chief, and we'll review some of the detail. I'm going to continue finalizing all the measurements out on the streets for the signs, and again, Nick and James have already reviewed the spreadsheet format.
Great.
And feel like there's current details enough that they can write a meaningful or add to the ordinance.
Terrific. And I think if you guys would talk to James and Nick about what format would be most helpful for us to make some policy decisions around ordinance sooner rather than later. So, you know, it may be that they prepare an outline without the technical ordinance language, for example. And I don't want to speak for Sven, but I think in some ways this is what, you know, one of the points that Sven was making, you know, where it's like, so this is where we would put something that said this, you know, so yeah, that'd be great.
All right, thanks.
I just don't want to waste time on detailing words when we may or may not align on those.
Right,
words,
right. Yeah, absolutely. Or frankly, spend the money on it. Yeah, absolutely. Are there any other questions for Neil? No? Terrific. Thank you. All right then. Chris, are you still here? Yeah. Item number 7, discuss and act on proposed amendment to New Shoreham zoning ordinance regarding application to amend the zoning ordinance of Christopher Warfel for proposed new section to Article 5, Section 519, affordable housing. So long, Chief. Chris, as we discussed at our work session, And as we were alluding to earlier, can we do two things here? One is extend to a date certain, but then in the intervening time between now and then, schedule a work set for those of you who did not view a recent work session that we had on this ordinance. One of the things that I think we did that was quite productive is we came up with a list of, what would you say, Chris? Eight or nine questions, six, that we all have homework assignments to come back with. I would like to have a work session to go through those, and I'm hopeful that that date that we have another works, that we sort of provide our answers, will also be a time where we have some more clarity around the direction that the state is going in. So if that approach makes sense, go ahead, come on up. Send Alicia Miro up here. I want to ask her a few questions. Right, exactly.
It's like the Hunger Games here. No, my question was going to be to your solicitor and to the town. Is there anything in this 519 that they thought would not be consistent with the state ordinances? And to your point, Keith, then it would be best not to go through this process if there is, and it probably is best not to go through this process until we have better information and the homework assignments are complete. So I understand that. I think that makes sense. I don't want to waste anybody's time. These meetings are long, and it would just probably be, not a good use, not efficient today.
But it's also really important to me, and I think to my colleagues, that you and others feel and understand that this is a good faith effort to get to the place that we want to get. That's, in other words, this is not me, as we discussed at the work session. This is not me or Sven or Neil or Martha or Molly sort of putting off and thinking that it'll go away. This is putting off so that we can do it once, do it comprehensively, and do it right.
I understand and I agree with you. I do want to caution about, trying to be perfect.
Right.
Because nothing is, and
Yep.
no matter what,
That's
we'll
fair.
probably have to
Yeah.
adjust, and that should be written into our strategy. And actually, do want to say something on our last meeting. You had talked about substandard lots, and there I was looking
Yes.
through the ordinances, and lo and behold, right before me was
Yes.
substandard lots. And I started
Yes.
looking at this. And so there's a lot of other things that could be done. I mean, just with some, I think, pretty minor
Yeah.
edits, and I will get those before you for consideration.
Wonderful.
The substandard lots, as long as they're used for ADUs in a certain way, I think is really an opportunity that needs to be discussed here.
Mhm.
So, there's a lot of things. And then 403, I said, Jen, remind me, did I put anything before you for 403? I don't see that. She goes, no, you didn't.
I know, that's like the one
edits.
that we don't talk about, but it's.
It's a big one.
It's a
It's
big
a
one.
big one.
So I've had edits
Yeah.
on my computer for over a year, and I was trying, remember I said I didn't want to give too much of a
Yes,
workload and
yes.
overload everybody,
Yeah.
but I mean, there's a lot of things, and maybe now's the time to get it all out.
Yeah.
So that we can look at it with the state, when the state comes in, and anyways, that
Yeah.
would be my,
Yeah.
my statement.
Martha.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that's pretty much along the lines of what Chris has said earlier, I think at least. And so now I'm just going to say, go after my own question. Is there any way, is there any reason why, and this is maybe a lawyer question, we can't have a more comprehensive single ordinance that has subsections of housing? So we're not looking up, what's this one? That's this one. Well, how does this cross over to this one? Oh, let's look at the chart. Let's, whatever the modern word for chart is.
Charts
Chart
are
is,
charts are Mary Anderson's love language.
You-
don't forget.
they've gone into other terms that I gave up trying to follow years ago. And it just seems like there's gotta be a way of making this something that doesn't take 6 levels of lawyers to figure out. And I understand you need lawyers for protection, all that, but it's making, every time I look at the zoning ordinance, I sort of lose my mind.
I think the problem is though, right now, if we tried to tackle that 800-pound gorilla, we'll never get anything done. 'Cause that's
I'm
a
only talking,
huge-
Chris, I'm only talking about, I was talking about the whole zoning ordinance. I've narrowed it down now to just the housing.
It's still huge.
Only the special
Yes.
versions of the housing, not, not the special exceptions, not the things that I want to get rid of. That's never, they're never going to happen. But the affordable housing, which is which and how does this work? And to have it in a way that people can understand it without having to spend hours and then having a lawyer tell them, no, you read the wrong line.
I
Can I,
agree.
can I suggest something? Because I'm with Martha a lot on this, a lot. But I also hear Chris on that's the 900-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
I think once we hear from Sakarchi and from Providence, I think then we need to look at what Providence says and go through 403, 518, 513, 519,
Yeah.
all of these things and figure out where are all these overlaps in a very simple framework. Because I think the state, it may be very black and white. And if so, then maybe there's ways to join or kill some or add 3 words into 513 that was in 40. I mean, so I'm just hoping that there's ways to improve and streamline, to Martha's point, because right now it is unbelievably I mean, Chris, you've lived it,
I think.
but I don't want to get lost.
I think we have identified the major ordinances that ordinance by ordinance that affect affordable housing that we did right off about a year and a half ago. So that's why I asked people, could you please volunteer for these ordinances and try and just rewrite them? So I think, to your point, if the state comes back pretty quickly, let's go through this list of ordinances and see how the state's changes have affected our ordinances. I do think it's a better use of time than going through this right now.
Yeah. And it's going to be like you said, this isn't endless. This is going to be in the next few months.
It's a dynamic document. It's always going to be.
I agree.
Nick or Millie, do I need to do something formal in terms of extending to a date certain?
Yeah, so thank you, Keith. While we have Chris there and he might have escaped, he's at least outside my eyesight.
We want
if
him
we
to get back on his crutches.
Sorry, Chris. If we could just have him acknowledge that an extension is acceptable to him with a date that you folks agree on, that would be perfect. And that would be a date certain, so we just need to be aware of what that date is.
Okay. So how about, what I have in mind is we put this off until June 15th, and in the intervening 6 weeks, we have a work session on this stuff. Does that make sense? Yeah, I was just making up the June 15th, not that.
Okay.
Well, I was just sort of, picture this.
June 21st.
Yes, I know. So I should have said, I was thinking of perhaps a date in mid-June,
No, like June 21st.
like June 21st.
I second June 21st.
Go ahead, Margie. Sorry, Margie. So are we.
The legislative session, as I understand it, doesn't usually end until the end of June. And a lot of the bills are all passed within the last week or so. So I would suggest that you go into something in mid to late July, after everybody's had a chance to compile what comes out of the state legislature. So you're not left hanging while we're
So-
still waiting to hear from the rest of the people.
My fingers are crossed that we'll have a sense, and if we need to extend it after that, we'll figure
That's
that
up to
out.
you.
Yeah,
I just, you may not have a sense because stuff
may
gets
not.
passed in the last week to 10 days. So
We may not.
just an FYI.
Yep. I would make a motion to continue this item until June 21st. Is that okay, Millie? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Thank you, guys.
Because this has to be a waiver by Chris Warfel to the extent
Okay.
the timeline, not in addition to you.
I grant that waiver.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Millie.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all for coming. Mm, mm, mhm. Yeah,
Okay, UConn starts in 20 minutes.
all right.
Sniffin, sit down.
I think this is a conspiracy by Nick Solitro to keep us from watching the University of Connecticut. So the next item is the proposed amendments that one of our solicitors put together regarding amusements. This is the arcade. I have to confess that I feel I made a mistake here when I was we're putting together this agenda. We have two matters before us here. The first being the question that Mr. Pollard put before us, which is, should we change our zoning ordinance to allow this? The second question being, should we, if we allow it, should there be a regulatory construct around? Unfortunately, only one of those things made this agenda. The second question did, but the first question didn't. So we are going to entertain both at our next meeting in, say, mid-April. What date is that, Millie? It's the 19th, on the 19th. So that's when we will do that. Now we're on item number 9, motor vehicles for hire. I don't know. Stop picking. Brad, can you make your way up? If it's uncomfortable, we can lower this. Brad, kidding aside, if it's uncomfortable, we can pull up a chair and lower that stand. Okay. Oh, right. Hi, Molly.
It's on. So you have before you right now what we had talked about, I believe, last month, but to get some more clarification on there, which was increase the taxi rates, base rate from New Harbor area to the Bluffs, Southeast Light, which was to add $2 to it. We've made some changes to the rate card as well on how it's designed. Also on the dirt roads, change that to the end of some of these dirt roads, which are quite long and quite hard on the vehicles, as you all are probably very familiar with. Change that to $6 from, I believe it was $4. Yeah. Okay. And then bike fees, increase that $1, and the tour rate from increases 15 to 90. You had some other questions on there in the past with, well, let's see on top of that too. Lowering minimum age fare from 6 to 4, and then the after hours surcharge at $5. After hours being from 2 a.m. to 5 p.m. a.m. Sorry. And then continuance of the $1 fuel charge, and consider amendment to the ordinance defining courtesy vehicle. But that item H really is not supposed to be on here because we haven't met about that as well. We're going to be talking to legal counsel about definitions, so we want to remove that from it. Okay. So there's some questions in the past on what we've done in the past. The tour rate has not increased. It was at 75. That last increase from that was back in 2015. So you're talking 8 years ago. And I think we can all agree that rates have gotten or costs have gotten a whole lot higher. And the reason for this increase is to really kind of drive more people in being willing to do tours, especially when it's busy out as well. Okay. And then the dirt road is kind of self-explanatory, just because it's so rough on there. And then there was a question I think that Sven raised, and we actually didn't know the answer to, but actually Sven, you probably did know it. Rates, we did not include the 7% sales tax on the one that you saw previously, and it was removed. It was on there previously and then removed, but the reason it was put on here was a couple of years ago during COVID, I believe it was, we raised the rate $1 to include taxes so that we didn't have to say it did not include sales tax. And that was on the advice of the legal counsel.
I just think whatever it is should be identified in the corner, whether it's included.
It
or
is.
not.
So it says rate include the 7% sales tax, but that's why.
Okay, the version didn't have that.
It wasn't on there.
The
It
new
was
rate card.
somehow removed.
Yeah.
Okay, but, right, so it was removed and it shouldn't have been removed because it really, you guys approved $1 increase to basically include that sales tax on there so that we could actually print this on that all rates include sales tax, so that if it's a $10 charge, it's $10 flat, not $10.70. All right, so that has been put back on the rate card. I think you probably have a copy of the revised rate card there. And then Sue and Judy really worked hard after our last meeting too to kind of simplify the rate card a little bit. So you'll notice on there's a few less lines or boxes on there to make it a little bit easier. We also put that $6 on there and highlighted that on there that it's for the end of the road travel. Okay, so that's very clear. And then what we did on here on the dirt roads, we added the asterisks and it's highlighted in a color so that anyone that's riding the taxis can see that as well. All right. And the bicycles went from $2 to $3. Again, that hasn't been raised in quite a few years on there too.
When was that raised to?
The bicycle one?
Yeah,
Bike rate, and we have a very, bike,
I just,
bike
know-
rates were raised in 2008. Was the last time there was any change.
Okay.
So you're talking 12.
Yep.
20.
15 years.
15
Yeah.
years, yeah.
Yep.
And the bikes have gotten maybe a little bit lighter, but a lot heavier in a lot of ways too.
So would you just walk me through a few of these things? Adding $2 to the fare from New Harbor out to the Bluffs or Lighthouse.
Actually had talked about that and we actually weren't gonna do it. And the way we separated these two out, like Old Harbor's all on one side, New Harbor's all on one side, makes it easier. But the $2 we actually weren't gonna do. That kind of, we talked about it and then we decided to take it off because it was a little complicated. But the whole thing was because it's like twice as long. I mean, it is twice as long, but we couldn't figure out like a zone to make it work out. So we kind of just.
That's no longer the case.
Yeah,
Oh.
so we kind of just didn't do it.
So it's not on here.
Yeah,
good
it's
deal.
not on there. It's on the other thing, but not.
So it's not on the,
right
it's not on this rate card.
No.
Okay, thank you. By the way, I think this is a lot better looking rate card. Thank you.
Yes.
Judy
easier to
Judy
read.
did all the work,
Better
right?
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to read.
There was a lot of doubles saying, things saying it twice and stuff like that.
I have, there are a couple of these things that I just struggle with. One is the minimum wage, the minimum wage or the minimum
age.
Yes. From 6 to 4 and sort of what the rationale is for that.
Well, it takes us to see, and we kind of looked at other, like, Nantucket and the other places, and like the ferry, and what other companies did with the age thing, and that kind of, that was it.
So it was 4, it went to 6, and now it would theoretically go back to 4. And then, I'm sure others have questions. I'm sorry to hog the mic here, but, the $1, continuing the $1 fuel charge.
Well, today OPEC just announced they're going to be lowering fuel production. Prices have already gone up a certain percentage this week alone, and they're expected to go up quite high this summer. And that was just on the news tonight. But it's, this is what we've been saying to you all along. Prices haven't gone down. Okay. And
Well,
we
except
put
they
that-
have. If you look at the gas price when we did the $1 surcharge last time and the gas price now, it's, significant difference. Yeah, I mean, it like it's a very significant difference.
So in April of 2022, the mainland gas price was $4.13. The island
Yeah, but you
price.
can't be looking at mainland price.
Let me finish. The island price was $4.83 a gallon. So prior to that, in July 2021, price was $3.03. And I'm saying this because I do have concerns about the prices. I raised them a little bit in the last meeting. So those will be the things I get a little stuck on. Today, the price is $3.32 on the mainland, and you have to extrapolate that the current rate of gas at the local gas station is anywhere from 17 to 20% higher. That would put you at $3.82. So, and there is a clause in there that generates when you get the rate increase. And I'm not sure what that was. But from the standpoint of the gas, to Keith's point, let's stay on the gas, it's actually back to where it was, well below where it was when you got the increase last year in April or March.
Well, the clause in there previously was when the gas at M&C went above $3.39, there would be an additional dollars.
Correct.
Okay, so, and right now, can I predict the future? No, I can't. Based on what you see in the news and everything, you're gonna see significantly higher than that during the summer.
Right. So my concern about the dollar fuel surcharge is only, I'm much more comfortable with linking it to something than I am. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay, today it's lower and we charge them $1 less. Tomorrow it's higher. Someone
Right.
gets in and they say, yesterday, it costs
Mhm.
$1 less to ride
sure.
the same distance. And it's
Right.
just to keep track of, that's my opinion.
Well, once it was implemented, then it was that way for the season, and then we did remove it.
Yeah.
Okay. And what we're
You
asking is
removed
that,
the gas.
what's that?
You removed the surcharge
The surcharge is removed at one point, yes.
in
And
so in
that's why we did
October.
ask for it to go back.
So in
last
October,
year.
you stopped collecting the additional dollar, even though you had the right to? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that when it was when it was raised $1 because of the fuel prices, it was also lowered $1. This isn't $1 on top of $1. It was lowered as well, and now and then we asked for it to go back last year.
Right.
Because fuel prices went up.
Right.
And you're asking us, do we want to continue for this season? Talking with the rest of the commission, the feeling was that it's not going to be getting any less, so they wanted to continue this season. Would it be removed in the future if prices go down? Yeah. But that's what the feeling was. And if you want to link a fee to it or a dollar percentage as in the past, that's fine as well. But we've got to, right now the season's coming up on us, so, if it's going to be when prices are over, I can't even pick a fee on that.
I can't do that.
But it's definitely not it's going down since
So
last summer. Yes, it's already going back up right now.
So I was looking at the market clearing prices for gasoline for the last 12 months. When we did this last time, the gas clearing price, at market was says like the wholesale price was $4, over $4, like $4.15. On March, whatever 30th, it was $2.75.
On the island?
No.
I have
No,
no
no.
fuel.
Wholesale
So they're
prices.
all, look, you can't, the ingredient cost is the large variable, right? You know, I mean, I understand, believe me, you know, I pay for gas here. It's just that the gas price that we pay on Block Island, just like the gas price that you pay on Narragansett, varies according to what
They're buying it
they're buying it at. That's why I thought that this was actually the best number to use, because it's the market clearing price.
And if I can compliment, the consistency of that bump up is pretty consistent, at least when I went back and looked at clearing prices from from the retail prices downtown. Meaning if it's 80 cents above, it's sort of always 80 cents above or eight.
I'd
I
have
mean,
to defer to Millie on that one. So, you know, as far as the fuel prices, I mean, what percentage above it is?
My point was it was consistent. Yeah, I'm not worried about what the number is. And I don't think we want to ask anything here. But my point was, it's not like there's something 1 month where it's way high, 1 month way low. Pretty much of a band of cost that you see at the moment.
Right. If we
When I
tend,
did the in-house.
if our gas station charges an extra $1 a gallon, let's say, on the, you know, for freight and sort of all of the things that we know that it costs, the ingredient cost is what varies. It's not the adder, you know?
No, no, it's not. But
So
it
that's-
also
that's why-
affects the cost of running the
Sure,
cab as well.
It
heavily.
absolutely does.
Yeah.
It absolutely does. But that hasn't changed. You know, what has changed is the price of the ingredient.
Right, you're absolutely right.
So, I mean, honestly, I'm not comfortable with continuing. I'm perfectly happy if there's a gasoline price spike, come and talk to us about the rate. You know, I mean, that's perfectly reasonable and legitimate and sort of, you know, a fair regulator of price ought to do. I mean, because I read the same stuff today, OPEC decides that they're going to try to cut production and goose up gas price. And if that happens, then let's talk about it. You know, I'm fine with that. But I think unless it's tied to something, then we're constantly sort of retroactively doing this math. And the math right now doesn't speak well for keeping the $1 fuel surcharge.
Okay.
Do you want to set a price and then?
I'd love to talk about that. You know, I don't know enough about, you know, but yeah, I mean, I think that's the fairer way to do it. Like, you know, you can't lose your shirt per gallon of gas, you know, sort of take all the margin out of driving your taxi because gas prices go up by 82 cents a gallon.
Yeah.
Similarly, when they go from up 82 to down 82, we
Then you
shouldn't have a
remove it, yeah.
mechanism that has it, you know what I mean? That's
Absolutely. I mean, right now it says on here, rates do not include temporary fuel surcharge. Now, maybe we could modify that to do not include a temporary fuel charge if local fuel prices go over. You pick a figure, but if we have to come to you in July or August, it's gonna take a month to do it and then
Right.
the season's over.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if
no,
we could put,
you get what I'm saying.
yeah,
It's not-
yeah,
you-
absolutely.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I guess the other way, Brad, and I know you saw the news this morning and Keith just reiterated, if I look at the futures market of gasoline, it's looking like it's going down. I understand the blip. I understand what OPEC just did. But if I had to take a predictor, the futures market is probably where I look. And they see the news you and Keith just talked about as a blip. I'm just saying, they're the ones who are a lot more knowledgeable than I am.
I don't know futures. All I know is that usually in the summer, that's when you see prices going up
Sure.
significantly.
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely.
Okay,
4th of July is like.
yeah,
or-
and in
or-
the winter times when you see it go down significantly.
Yeah, yeah. So let's work on a number.
Because it's April now. If we can come to you in May with that figure,
Of course.
Okay.
I have one other thing that I want to talk about that's not rate related, but that we have to talk about as our society changes, and that is cash only. At some point, taxis are a vital part of our avoiding accidents late at night. And that's why, like, I get, if you're driving late at night, you ought to make more. The vomit charge, if I owned a taxi, is not high enough, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But you have kids coming out of bars, and I don't, if I assembled our three daughters, my bet is between them, they don't have $8 in cash. So at some point, we are going to have to figure out a way that.
I would say probably half your cash stays Venmo. I know I do Cash App, you know, people have credit cards.
Yeah.
I mean, I know most of the people say cash only just.
Yeah, I think we need to end that.
But we do have, you know, I'm sure there's half of us that.
Keith, I'm not gonna disagree with you, but you can't, town council can't regulate an independent business, tell them how to do business. It's like going to a restaurant and saying, and there are many here that will accept cash only. Okay, you can't make them take credit cards. I agree with you. I agree with what you're saying, because it's
Yeah.
a valid thing.
I think it's an interesting legal question,
Yeah,
because I think I can construct a pretty good, pretty solid argument along the lines of.
I
what
would
just-
implore you to give it a shot, but
Yeah.
you know, for the,
Well,
for
Brad,
town council.
we may.
But you're gonna be telling an independent business that's regulated by the state how they have to do something.
But it's a
Well,
license
you have
issue.
to be, in order to be eligible for a license, there are requirements that we can.
Well, yeah, but you have to, just like there are businesses that don't accept cash now. I got a personal problem with that, 'cause that's going.
But
against
that's a
Constitution.
private, that's a business that's not licensed necessarily.
That's what?
That's a business that's not necessarily licensed. The question that Keith's raising, or even
Actually, it
just
is, but
raising,
anyway.
raising is.
Well, you hear me. What's that? Bars are licensed. We could theoretically have a provision in our license. Yes, we could.
Or alternatives than cash.
Yeah, alternatives to cash.
And the restaurants will take care.
Yeah, and God bless them. Yes, I know, exactly.
Are they shucked or not shucked?
Right.
So the one comment I want to reiterate, and Brad, you kind of snickered when I said it the last time about the number of cars coming to the island and the connection between the price of parking on the other side and then the price of cabs. And you basically shared that, oh, I've never heard that in my
I'm
time
being
of
very
having,
honest.
and I think you said a very large inn.
Yeah.
So-
And before you say, I am gonna reiterate that, because there is no question, it is cheaper to bring a car here than park on the other side, okay?
Correct.
And your business, very well, someone may have said that to you. I can
Well-
honestly state that I and others have never
Okay.
had that.
So since you made size the issue, I did speak to Frank at the Spring House, and he said this has been an ongoing conversation and concern that's fallen on deaf ears. So again, as I shared if you were in the room, when I did the parking stuff, I researched what's out there.
Mhm.
So, and again, not being privy to how we got to where we are today, so it makes it a little more difficult. But on average, so I spoke to the commissioner for the state of Rhode Island around how they manage taxis. I get it, we got an exemption from it, so it's a slightly different animal. But however, I did walk through with him how you currently, the taxi drivers who are required to take credit cards in their taxis on the mainland, how they arrive at their pricing. So I used their algorithm and applied it to everything. You have everything, I'd say in each bucket, I did one or two rates. What is your average, not participant, guest in the taxi? What's your average number of people in your taxi? Okay, so 4. All right, so just, that's perfect you said that, because I guesstimated that's what you might say. So when I look at 2 guests, 4 guests, and compare it again around affordability, your rates, the island rates, are double to triple what the same amount of distance would be in Narragansett. So for example, let me just pick one. From Old Harbor to the Spring House, it's 0.5 miles. right? So your base rate is 11 and the state state policy is 2 people make up the base rate. The island's already getting a base rate based on 1. So you're getting additional $2 for a couple. Now you've just said 4. So when you look at that, that takes the average, just a couple coming over for the weekend, $13 to get from the boat to the spring house, right? So then you add on, if you have 4 guests, you're now up to $17 for a half a mile to get guests from the boat. I'm just talking total price. You can, if they divvy it up, that's theirs, but I'm looking at the base price. So if you were to do that same distance on the mainland with the drop time, so they have, our base rate's 11, their minimum rate is $3.50. I get it's different. It's $6.70. So I guess my concern is, and perception has been the taxi commission has pushed through a lot of stuff on past councils. So given that I've heard that from people on the island, I'm doing the due diligence to make sure. I'm not trying to make your life difficult. I just want to make sure I understand it. So from that standpoint, when you start to get into the rates and the other increases, so when you talk about the bike rate from $2 to $3, so why are we giving an additional $1? Bikes, as you said, are actually lighter. So what's justifying an additional $1? So the trend on bikes is not that. Okay. Okay.
That's the reason why people who are carrying bikes would like to get $50.
Okay.
Also, I'm saying, I'm gonna get you this. Oh.
Please, thank you, Judy. I think Jim wants to speak.
Council mentioned that, and your study is great, don't get me wrong, the information you got, there's one factor I think it is, just to give you the mic. Okay, sorry about that. I think there's one factor you need to take into consideration. Our work schedule here or our business is 3 months. We've got to make up enough money in 3 months, July, August, September, or maybe half of June and half of September, 3 months. So what people on the mainland, they have a whole year to make their money.
That's a valid point.
We
That's
have
fair.
to get a
Yeah.
new vehicle every few years. Vehicles are not $2,000 like they were back 30 years ago. I just bought one last year. It was almost $50,000. Just that one vehicle. And then you add in your insurance, your maintenance, your phone bills. So it's just, I think you're talking apples and oranges. That's my opinion.
And I would like to see if you're comparing prices, maybe compare with
Suzanne?
Oh, sorry.
No, into the speaker.
If you're comparing prices, don't compare us with Providence, compare us with maybe Nantucket or somewhere else, because we look at their prices and we're pretty right on with what they're charging.
I mean, all the stuff I compared to was Narragansett.
Okay.
It's basically the coastal towns because the state is set up into traffic districts.
Okay.
So
Judy, did you have something?
I wonder, have the rates of rooms gone up? Are the rates higher here on rooms and on other things as far as eating goes? Everything on Block Island is more expensive than the other towns. That's just the way it is. And sometimes maybe people don't have enough money to get a taxi because they spent it getting a room and getting dinner.
I'm looking at Nantucket and they are pricey. I just looked at Nantucket. And they seem to have the same rate. They still operate on the same rate schedule. Do you know? I mean, they've got a rate card, looks like ours. It doesn't, it was like 2017 is the only reason I asked. It's $26 from downtown to Tom Nevers Airport.
I guess at the end of the day, I would like a little deeper dive into this rather than voting on it right now.
Sorry.
No, I will say that we've discussed almost every one of them. I want to reinforce I don't want to, we'll call it the puke rate. I don't ever want to have to clean up somebody else's at 4 o'clock in the morning. So God bless the people that are driving at night, and let's make sure they're taken care of. All the other ones I'm somewhat suspect, I want to discuss and have a dialogue on it, but that's the one. God bless the drivers late at night, and we need them. I mean, we all know that issue. We don't want those people on the road driving, and so I'm fine with that.
I have no problem with the change in the tour rate. Hasn't been changed in 8 years, and you are making a decision to purchase.
Correct.
a
I would
tour.
agree. Absolutely.
I have no issue with the reinstating after-hour surcharge. I had a problem with the bike rate until I looked at the spreadsheet and then had Brad confirm that the bike rate hasn't changed since 2008. That's a long time to
Yeah.
not have an increase. We've talked about the fuel charge. We need to figure out a way to link that. What am I missing? The age. I don't know. Jesus, why are you gonna make us vote on that? But I tend to think, all things being equal, with the other increases here, I guess I struggle with that one. I don't know how frequent or common that is. You can tell I'm on that one sort of. Say it again, Brett. Oh.
We're just trying to, looking at the fuel surcharge, if we can
Yeah.
get you to do something like that with a fixed price on there. If it's over, do you add that? If it's under, it doesn't get added, but it's on the rate card.
Uh-huh.
Does that seem to work for you, or?
I think it's a more rational approach than that for everybody. But
Yeah, no, well, that's what it was in the past. But it wasn't on the rate card.
Yeah.
It was just passed.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
I'd rather see it on the rate card.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, on the mainland in Narragansett, the trigger for their fuel charge is $3.50 currently.
But I would think ours would be higher.
Yes,
Oh,
correct.
definitely, yeah,
You should,
yeah, yeah,
if you equate this roughly 17%, that would take it to 410 is the average difference in the price of the mainland to here.
So would you be amenable to putting it at 410 or 415, something like that?
I would,
I mean-
I would be, I don't have a number in mind. I think I'd like to know, what generally our gas price floats above, the market price, and establish it there at a fair number. I'm not trying to stiff anybody. I just, so whatever that number is, that is supportable, I think is certainly a way to go with that.
Bicycles are $3 on Nantucket.
It's what?
Bicycles are $3 on Nantucket.
But to
And
Neil's
the
point-
accidental
to Neil's
cleaning.
point too,
is-
because he's done a lot of research on this too, for Narragansett, if there's a 350 input there for triggering additional charges, and does the 4 to 6 make a, or 6 to 4 on an age line? Does that make a huge difference? If that's a.
How do you get a taxi in Narragansett?
Yeah, the difference right now between the island price, and again, this is where obviously it's privately owned. Like I just did Intel over the last 2 weeks, just watching what the price was there, what the AAA rate is on the mainland for Narragansett. And right now it's about 56 cents difference. So the trigger at 350, if you threw on 56 cents, you'd be somewhere in the 405 range. So that's kind of how my mind worked to get to that. It doesn't mean it's right. I mean, it's just some sort of application.
But in an effort to move forward, because the season this year, you've got more drivers going even now. Okay, I believe Jim just got on the road this week. Okay.
I know, he's throwing dust onto our front porch with that $50,000 vehicle that he drives by. All right, so after hours. Dirt roads.
Interestingly enough, Keith, I just did a quick review while we were sitting here, and it's very clear that bikes are getting lighter and they're getting heavier. And I know that sounds strange, but some bikes are getting much lighter, but yours is heavy, and the disc brakes and a number of things, fatter tires. So you really have this separation. Some bikes are getting much heavier and others are getting, and then electric
If
bikes
you
a
get
whole
into
nother
batteries,
issue. But I was sort of with you. They're all getting, my bike's a lot lighter than it was 10 years ago, but depends on what kind of bike. And there are a lot of fat tire bikes out there.
There's a lot of battery bikes.
I would, if I'm, let's see, tour. Bear with me. After hours. So here's where I am. I would support the after hours, the tour, the bikes, the dirt roads. And would, you know, at our April 19th meeting between now and then, if we could work out a number on fuel adjustment, that makes sense.
So
because the first bullet from your 29th is not in there anymore. The adding $2.
Right, that's not it.
Yeah.
I guess if I can, Keith, I would agree with everything you said, but on the fuel surcharge,
Yeah.
I'd almost rather, well, we can discuss it April.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want to do, but
Yeah.
But I guess right now I don't see the evidence why that would be there. And so let's get this schema. Let's figure out what is the trigger, what is the level
Yes,
to be able to do that. Let's work on that for the next few months. So that, Brad, to your point, if it's suddenly rocketing up in July, we don't have a month, right? We can get a meeting. Hey, look, this is what's happened the last 3 weeks. We need to act or something. But I guess I'm not in favor right now of the fuel surcharge, only because I don't see it. Same idea, you know, do a monthly
Yeah, I
review or
mean-
something.
I actually don't think any of us is disagreeing on this. I
Yeah.
mean, I think the idea is there ought to be, no one disputes that at some level there needs to be a fuel adjustment, right? If gas all of a sudden
Yeah.
is $7.
Totally agree.
Yeah,
We're all done.
You know,
we're just trying to get ahead of it.
no,
that's all.
I'm, you know, I get that. I'm just, I would like to reduce, I would like it to work both ways.
That's what we're
You know what I mean? Which, again, I don't think any of us are disagreeing. And I think you have to peg that to a number or something. I'm not sure what the something is. And if the fuel cost is above this, the ride is an extra buck. That makes sense. And it saves the motor vehicles for hire commission or the taxis from coming to a town council and saying, you know, we're losing our shirts, and it's just sort of an understood and measurable approach to it.
And if it goes below, then it comes off.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's figure that one out. But I guess
Yeah.
right now I'm not in favor of Well, let's work it through.
Yeah, let's work with it. And you know, we may not be able to get there. So
Can you postpone it till, as Martha said, May?
Yeah.
Okay, we can try and give some more
Well, it's
research on that.
First meeting in May.
it's up to you guys.
But in the
You know.
interest of the rate for what's going on with the taxi coming on, would you be willing to approve the other chart changes on there? Are we still talking, were you still suggesting keeping it at 6 on the year? Or? Yeah.
So I would support dirt roads, bike rate, tour rate, and after hours. And then we'd work on the fuel surcharge.
Okay.
That's where I am.
Basically everything except change rate for kids.
Changing the rate for kids, working on the fuel charge, and number 1 in
That's
this
off.
memo is off. Yeah.
What's number 1?
Yeah, it was
Which
the
is
$2.
removed.
Yeah,
And-
yeah, that's it.
And if we're showing all our cards, I'm not there on the kids and I'm not there on the fuel surcharge.
But that's what we just said.
I know. I'm
No, that was, I'm telling you where I am. That
He's,
doesn't mean-
he's sort of, he's okay with the kids. I'm saying I'm not okay with the kids because, yeah.
No, I have the kids out of my,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I have the kids out. Just to go over it again, because it can get confusing. Dirt road charge. Bike rate. Tour rate. After hours.
Dirt road.
Yeah, I said dirt road, yep.
Question on the dirt road one.
Yeah.
So how do you decide the scale of that? So the measurements to the end of the road of that dirt road, and then if you go down half of it, is it currently $2? Is it, okay. So you just guesstimate where the halfway point is and okay.
And some roads aren't even that, like if the road is good and it's short, then it's not.
And very frankly, there are some dirt roads that deserve the full rate.
Yeah.
And my hope is that the judgment of the driver
Yes.
is appropriate.
Yeah.
And you just gotta go with that.
Yeah.
Boy, if I had to go down to Lewis Farm, I don't know what rate I'd charge. Oh my God.
How do you feel about those?
I'm good. Do we need to do it now or are we waiting? That's a question.
Why don't you do that, everything except the fuel surcharge now, just to have it done.
And
So-
not the kids.
So I would make a motion to increase the dirt road charge, increase the bike rate. Yes, please.
Why $2? Why jumping 2 on the dirt road? Not,
It's overpriced, that's kind of how our zone is.
So the last time the dirt road charges changed.
And it's not all dirt roads. It is what they've chosen, they went through very diligently, went through the ones that when it's going to the end, you're going to very long and not a very good road.
The last time the dirt road charge was changed was in 2015. And it was on a scale of $0 to $4.
Correct. And the roads have gotten better.
Depends on the day. Right, Jim? Yeah, I know. If Mike stays back
I guess my only reaction to it is they're getting the increase on the rates and everything.
Mhm.
And then nothing's changed on the dirt road. I guess, are you trying to address that there are some roads that are longer than others and you're, Okay. okay. So the $4 road, let's say, is 3/4 of them. You have some that are even longer, and that's what you're trying to assess the extra $2.
Yeah, and we, we mentioned which roads, it's not all, it's like Bullseye Road, Southwest Point, and we, it said the end.
Great, sorry, I missed that, so.
It's not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's special roads that, yeah.
The whole west side, is what we just said? The whole west side. They may call it tar, but I'm good with moving forward on those four. I think it was.
So
Yes.
do you have those, Millie? Increase the dirt road charge, increase bike rate, increase hourly tour rate, and reinstate after-hour surcharge.
Adding the rates, 7% sales tax. and
Yep.
eliminating the tip rate.
Yes. To revisit coming up with a mechanism in May.
And going back to the maintaining. Gotcha.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
I just didn't raise that. Beautiful. So I would make that motion.
Second.
Please. Please. Yes.
So thank you, Sven, for calling my attention to the rate card, where Lewis Road is not mentioned. Does that mean we don't need does that mean that there is no, dirt fee on Lewis Road?
You identify yourself as being up from Coonimus Road, Mr. Lewis.
No, that's just, but then now that's a serious question.
No, I know, I'm teasing.
But additionally,
Yes.
if you were, when Sue drove down our road 2 days ago with the fair from the airport, and she went all the way to the end, to the cliffs, to McGill's house, my uncle's place, and that's a full mile.
Yeah,
This time of year, that road deserves a dirt charge. In the summertime, just after Bain has repaired the road halfway down to my house, it is better than Coonimus Road.
mm-hmm.
So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. You know, only recently do people start taking, I have a sense that there is a dirt road charged on my road, whether it's appropriate or not, by the rate card. But also, I would struggle to imagine that that the taxi drivers don't have a preconception that Lewis Road is always bad. So that's just my own personal mind. But is Lewis Farm, it's not on this list, so it,
It's not on the list, but we do charge it for a dirt road, but you're right, it's not on there.
well, here's what's, it's not over. You got Dickens Road right here, in
Yeah.
Central.
It's on the rate.
Yeah, so and west.
That's the thing.
I'll let you all-
Yeah, you're right. It's not on there.
I'll let you all struggle with it.
Yeah. Just done. Motion's on the floor. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. All those opposed, no? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. This
We'll be
is,
back to you in May.
yeah,
Okay.
we're doing our best to do this soundly and fairly
And
with data.
And understanding your comments, Brad, I think about accepting a variety of forms of payment. I think that's something that, at least I'll speak for myself. I think we should really have it. We need to have a discussion about it. If I take myself,
I'm not
Ted-
saying you don't. I
Yeah.
agree with you, it needs to happen,
Right.
but my.
well, we'll let Mr.
suggestion-
Callahan and
my
Mr.
Suggestion is check with the state first on that.
Yeah.
That's what my suggestion.
We,
Okay.
got it.
Because you.
I got it. Got it.
Precedent, I mean, like I said, some.
We got a
restaurants
basketball
only
game I
take
want
cash,
to watch.
And
Got
that's
it.
also
I know.
regulated by, don't you do a food and beverage?
Well, anyway, that was
Item number 10, discuss an act on House of Representative Tina Spears. I don't, take care, guys. Thank you. I have a thought about this, a very brief thought. There's a lot here. And I don't have anything prepared, but I would be willing to prepare a response on this for your review from the town council. Does that sound good? All right. Item 11, discuss and act on changes to the harbor fees Harbors fees, annual and nightly mooring rates, dockage fees, charter slip fees on clerk base is a new schedule. Go ahead.
Can I make a motion to accept the New Harbor fees as noted in the memo that hopefully we've all had a chance to read. And I applaud the Harbors Department in looking at revenue opportunities that are good for the town and fair. So motion is made.
Totally agree. Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Perfect. Thank you, Sven. Grant writer.
And I'm sorry, Marianne, I apologize. Marianne, can we have that revenue discussion with Amy at some point in the next month or so? Thank you. I just don't want to, if nothing else for
Oh, I
David,
think
I
it's-
don't want to lose track.
I think it is the next 10 days or so.
Oh, next 10 days or so.
Yeah. Mary Ann.
So, as the council requested, that we did go out to bid for an RFQ for grant writers, we received 3 proposals. One we eliminated right off, and 2 others, we interviewed. The interviewing team was myself and Allison Ring. Charlene ran the Zoom and also offers her opinion as we go through this process. And as we finished the interviews, the 3 of us were chatting, what we like about one, what we didn't like, and we kept going back and forth. And finally, I think the 3 of us had an epiphany at the same time. And we're recommending that we work with and hire both grant writers, because what we found out, some had strengths in particular areas. And when I announce the name of one of you, you're really going to realize what that one is. And the other one had strengths in other areas. Both of them had the same strategic process. Work with staff, identify, look for grant opportunities, right, and then administration. One of the things both grant firms said to us, they were very impressed with the work we've already done and the fact that we had narrowed it down to about 6, 7 categories, of the projects we've talked, which
I can
includes,
only imagine what it must be like working.
that's what they said. They were
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
blown away
Yeah.
by that,
Yep.
which was, for us, that's great. It shows,
Sure.
if anything, that we're on a pretty good path here with the projects that we're talking, the capital projects and things like that. So I'm recommending to the council that we award the grant writing RFQ qualification of one firm, which was for 5 paramedics, and that clearly has the public safety team up those type of grants. And the second one is the HCH Inc. So those are the 2 that I'm requesting that the council approve that we work with. And both firms, I said we had some little bit of fun with that in the budget for this year. If we come up with anything, would they be interested in us with a grant opportunity this year? And both said they'd be more of a, based on the fact that we've seen much.
Can I just ask a practical question? How do you envision this working? Is it, are you going to break down by subject area, by, you know, what I mean? Like, how do you envision these 2 firms working? Is it, you're going to say to the paramedic people, you guys handle all the public safety stuff and this other firm will handle whatever human services and blah, 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 or I'm just curious.
So what we'll probably do, and I'll probably work with Allison on this closely, is when we identify something that we think we would like to proceed with, is look at the 2 qualifications and see which one works best. Like the paramedics, I see a lot of fire department, public safety, even what they said in their interview, because we were talking about the public safety facility. And he said, but wait a minute, step back. There may be some equipment you need and stuff like that, which I didn't even think of.
Sure.
Which is on a smaller scale,
Right.
which would be the 25 to 50 and things like that. The other firm, the HCH, has more expertise in housing related things. So that's it. It
Yeah.
really, as we were vetting them out, chatting with them, clearly the expertise of both firms came out and were really
I
identifiable.
have to say, I love the fact that you're open to that. I think it makes a lot of sense. Go ahead.
One quick question. Marion, is it, as these grant writers come on, can you help us just sort of understand the process? Because having been on a lot of committees, everybody at one point or another in almost every meeting says, well, let's go and try and look at grants, or let's try and talk about grants. And I can see this getting overwhelmed, and I just want to make sure that there's a clear sort of vetting process through you, or like just, I don't know what the structure is. I just, as we announce these folks on board, I can imagine that there's, you understand what I'm saying? Just, let's just make sure it's clear to everybody. Otherwise,
So they're not going on a fishing mission if that's. what
that's,
you're saying.
that's right.
So what both of them stated is that they have software where they put in the word, a particular word, and then they'll be notified when a grant opportunity comes up. And they're looking at state, federal, and also private. That's one thing we haven't looked at. We have not looked at any private stuff. And once it comes up, they'll read through the grant and see what the requirements are. Some grant requirements are, let's keep it something simple. Population more than 50,000, population less than 50,000. So that immediately, if it's more than 50, clearly that eliminates it. We talked about the rural piece, and that was one with the paramedics started speaking about the fact that we're a rural community. So they will help vet these grant opportunities for us.
Thank you.
And no, they just won't apply. All applications will come through us beforehand.
Can we have a motion to endorse the retaining of these two firms?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Rhode Island State Police budget update. Where are we on that?
I have a meeting this coming Wednesday where I may be able to have some more information in that
Wonderful.
regard.
Thank you. Item 14, discuss and act on board, commission, and committees. J is something we talked about when we made recent appointments to harbors. I actually think Mary Ann, Millie, to the extent that you're comfortable, if we're going to do this, we might look at perhaps other committees that are having similar quorum issues. Maybe there aren't any, but it seems like if we're gonna go with a policy, which I endorse, the idea of having extra alternates so that we don't have these 2 months, 3 months in the wintertime where there are no meetings because no alternates, because we don't have any alternates. Let's do it once. Harbors is one where the business, quite frankly, is so compelling in a lot of months that it's really problematic not to have a quorum. But I would argue that, if there are others, we should consider those as well. Don't you? I mean, I don't think there's anything earth shaking about what I said, but have at it. And it's no, when I say that, it's not like someone's falling down on the job. It's, people do have lives. So let's make it easier for people to have lives, but also for the town's business to be benefted.
So let us look into it and then let us take a look at whether there's any statutory requirement
that's the
that
other thing,
doesn't allow us
yes.
to do anything
Right,
like that. But I
right.
think it's an excellent idea.
Great. And then we do have vacancies. Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire, PAC, Water District, Sewer District. Given the amount of resources and significant challenges I think we're facing on water and sewer, please somebody pay attention to that. Yes?
Were you going to address A right now, or were you waiting to hear back to see if there were other?
Well, that's a very good question.
Did you change the ordinance?
I'm sorry.
What are we
I
talking
may
about?
not understand your question.
All right, so I was wondering if you were planning to make a motion to expand the Harbors Committee, or was
I
that just?
personally, I would like to do it once.
Okay, that's what
You
my question
know,
was. Thank you.
that's my take on it. If you come to us and say, we're having a problem, Martha's right here, so I'll say, we're having a problem on HTC harbors and recreation. And they could, they have business that they conduct, particularly, from October to April.
And then it's summer.
Yeah, you know, so again, nothing, no, not value laden, just we need to make sure that the business continues. And if you can identify a few of those, or if it's only harbors, that's fine too.
But I think what we really have to have is what's statutory and what we can
Yes,
do.
that's absolutely,
Because I know zoning was
yeah,
statutory.
yeah. Anyway, motion to adjourn? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Oh, God, I've been here since 5:30.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a pretty meaty agenda.